Start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective, we like to say. But I guess this will be the last show for a while that we cover the EPL because the World Cup's finally here. So we're going to try to do a couple shows covering that. Maybe not every game, mostly probably cover the U.S. games. Might even try to get a U.S. preview out before Monday, or if not, we'll cover the game Tuesday and maybe do a preview then. But anyways, I'm your host Ben, and I'm joined as always with my co-host Rex. So Rex, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be back. Getting ready for the World Cup. We've been waiting for a long time. Can't believe it's finally here.
And already off to a good start because I put on the wrong script. Um, I mean, this is not good. Okay, there we go. All right, so we'll just kind of get into it quickly because we do have a lot to cover. What was your story of the week?
Okay. Well, I got a couple stories for the week. My main one though was I was kind of thinking it was going to be an upset week because we started off with City losing, but instead it kind of ended up not necessarily being an upset week, but we'll call it a banana skin week because some of these games were really close. Leeds almost won, for instance, and I thought maybe Arsenal would be a kind of banana skin game for them too.
Good call.
It ended up not being one, but so that was my first take from the weekend. Really was I was really thinking it was going to be an upset week, but kind of normalcy was kind of restored. But it was very close to an upset week. United also almost lost, so Garnacho scoring at the end, so it was almost an upset week. Ended up not being it. So that was my main takeaway, and then the other takeaway is just getting ready for the World Cup. Some of these guys who were snubbed, let's say, ended up putting in big performances
Hmm.
and kind of, relaying the message to their manager, hey, maybe you should have picked me. Tony's one of them. We got a couple other guys that played well and are not making the World Cup. De Gea had a couple good saves, and he's left out of the squad, surprisingly. So
Yeah, I
that's
was
my
surprised
that's
by
my
that.
second point.
All right,
Yeah, it's,
all right.
it's pretty interesting to see the psychology of players not making it, how they came out and played in this last game, because this is the only game that they had like right before basically receiving the news that they didn't make the team. So it was good to kind of see them like rebound and say, "Hey, manager, you should have picked me."
And it was weird. I mean, I was kind of thinking of something similar because you mentioned Tony. Firmino scored. I thought Arsenal's Gabriel Margulies. I can't say his names.
Alcahays, yeah,
There we go.
he was a snub, but he's a pretty good player.
I thought that was maybe his best game, at least I've seen this season. Because Saliba didn't necessarily have his best game, and USA's Pepe was a surprising snub, and he scored. And so I was kind of thinking of something similar. Another thing that I was thinking about is what was the mindset going into this? Because for guys like maybe Jamie Madison that had finally made it, how was he going to play? And he actually had to go off after about 20 minutes. So you were worried a little bit about that. Like, you finally do make the squad, and then you still have a game to play. There are a lot of guys that missed because of illness. Mitoma
Mhm.
comes to mind from Brighton. Now maybe there was an actual like bug. I mean, I don't know if it was COVID and they just called it illness. But there was a lot of that. But another thing that kind of went into my mind is it's got to be crushing to go through this like brutal stretch of the season. You actually make the team. You get through the season unscathed, and then you still have to get through like the training sessions. And it looks like there's been a casualty for the French squad, and a pretty big name. It looks like Christopher Nkunku is not going to be able to participate anymore. I think it's to a challenge from Kamavinga. And so that is quite the blow. I think for France because maybe he wasn't going to start. You don't necessarily know what Deschamps is going to play. You mentioned Benzema and Mbappe will feature, but he could have come on in a bench as a second half sub and uh, been some kind of a difference maker because he's been
Yeah.
flying, at least for Leipzig. We think he's going to finally make a big move, maybe this summer. So that's
Mhm.
that's quite a big blow, and one door closes, maybe another door opens for youngster Kalu Muani, Frankfurt. I think he'll probably be the replacement. So that was just kind of
Yeah.
the things on my mind.
Yeah. Sucks. It's really heartbreaking for these guys to get hurt without even playing the World Cup. And like you said, to make it to this point, I'm sure they're worried about getting hurt. make it all the way to, hey, I survived the first half of the season, and then to get hurt in training. Ooh, I wonder if he's also mad at the player for the Camavinga for going in on him hard.
I mean, I think French fans are mad. Camavinga did not have his best game. The last game they played versus I think Denmark when France
Mhm.
lost in the Nations League. There was talks actually that Camavinga wasn't even going to make the squad.
That's right.
And
Yeah, I
then
remember you saying that.
he ended up kind of being like a last minute, like one of the last names. Um, and yeah, to me, it's kind of crazy to do kind of hard training after all of that. I've seen clips of like Brazil kind of doing like fun stuff, dropping a ball from like the sky and trying to do like a first touch. Lighthearted stuff like that. I can understand running, but like actual like hard like physical drills after the kind of strenuous stretch they've all had. That was surprising to me. But again,
Yeah, that's a good point.
maybe all of them are doing it, and I'm just talking out of my what. Um,
I don't know though. I think you're right. If I was a coach, I think I would kind of do fun like team bonding things to start because, like you said, like these guys are already in top shape at least running wise, and the only thing they really need to do is get on the same page with their teammates. So yeah. I mean, I think there's some stock to that. You don't really have to play hard right now, and God forbid people get hurt in training. The managers don't want that either. So yeah, there's some stock to that for sure.
and also, it's not like a usual World Cup where you almost have like almost a whole month to do these like bonding things. You only gonna know these guys or being on the squad for like I don't know 5 or 6 days before like the first
Yeah,
game starts. So maybe doing like
it's insane.
more bonding stuff actually is beneficial just in general.
Because you don't
But
have time to do it. Yeah.
another story is the USMT did have its roster reveal. We had some predictions, or I guess like some thoughts last week before it actually happened, and now we actually do have it. So I do think we should spend a little time covering this because there was a few shocks. We were
Oh yeah.
expecting maybe Stefan. We heard rumors about that, but no Ricardo Pepe was truly a shock to me. Tim Ream actually and Ricardo Vickers made it, so that was good. And the inclusion of Haji Wright was a bit of a shock. So I don't know, Rex. What were your first thoughts?
Yeah, it was really bizarre because we kind of talked about the possible leaks that Stefan didn't make the team, and that ended up being true. I mean, it's really worrisome for me just because if Turner does get hurt, and he was nursing a groin injury, so that's not out of the realm of possibility. But if he gets hurt, we're looking at Horvath and who's the other one, the MLS keeper. So
I think Sean
not
Johnson.
really Sean Johnson. Yeah. So I mean, they're good keepers, but I think I mean, I just for me, Stefan needs to be on there, even if he's not going to start. If something did happen to Turner, I'd feel pretty comfortable going to Stefan. I can't really say the same going to Horvath or Johnson necessarily. So yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have him at least on the bench, if anything. And then yeah, I mean, Pepe is playing really well. He has 6 goals and 2 assists, and he's playing in the Eredivisie, the Dutch league. It's a pretty good league. I mean, they have some good teams, Ajax, PSV, a lot of others. So yeah, kind of a snub there, but Cameron Carter Vickers making the team is good. He's played in Champions League games this year. He played against Real Madrid. He's
Hmm.
played against Shakhtar and Leipzig. Still not sure if he's going to. He probably won't start. I don't
I
know
don't
if
think
he's
so.
going to even play much.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was excited to see him on the roster at least. And we wanted Tim Ream, and he's on there too. So I was excited about that. But did you watch this live, by the way? The roster thing?
We said we were going to, but I kind of forgot. So I turned it in towards like maybe like, I don't know 30 minutes into it. Apparently
Yeah,
Twelman actually interviewed Berhalter
he
straight up,
did.
but he
So
didn't really. It was kind of a I don't know if Berhalter like knew the questions beforehand or like had some approval, but it was very mush.
that's true.
There weren't really any real no one like
Hard
tried.
questions.
Right, yeah, no one tried to like bog him down into some of this. I mean, I don't necessarily know if it was actually in that interview or Berhalter gave something afterwards, but he did give out some kind of a quote to someone else, basically saying that he liked the idea of a hierarchy in place. And that was
Hmm.
basically the reason why he chose to not invite Stefan, because Stefan
Hmm.
and Turner were close. So maybe this was kind of a way to kind of, give Turner some confidence. But like you said, that
Hmm.
can come back to hurt if something happens to Turner. And Turner is
True.
nursing an injury,
Mhm.
at least we think. But
Well,
to kind
oh,
of
wait,
go
one thing though, like watching it live, some of the listeners, if they watch it live, Ben, I don't know if you know this, but like during that interview with Berhalter, like there were people screaming at him from off camera, and I think they actually got removed because like there's some cursing. Someone said like "keep effing trying" is what it sounded like to Berhalter, and Berhalter heard him
Oh no.
and kind of smirked. So like yeah, there was already I think the guys had to be removed because at times you couldn't even hear what Berhalter was saying because people were yelling at him. So I don't know. I think there was some fans that were there that weren't happy with some of his picks for sure. But I think on the whole, it's what we want to see. But yeah, if you I don't know if I can find the YouTube clip and send it to you, Ben. But it was pretty funny because I rewound and tried to listen, and there's definitely a guy yelling like "keep fucking trying" at Berhalter. So it was interesting to see it. I guess I would like. I mean, I think we need to be more supportive of him because he's in charge for the World Cup, whether we like it or not. And maybe after this he'll be gone. But it was
So,
kind of disheartening to see.
so
We
I
need to
have
support him, I think.
I have
But
some real big fears. I mean, they've already
me too. I fears, yeah.
most of the people like MLS affiliated kind of like accounts at least on social media have already tried to do the whole play where it's like we got to remember it's the youngest squad we've ever had, maybe the youngest squad in the World Cup. So they've already tried to like downplay things like that. I think it's the weakest group, to be honest. So to not advance would be pretty disappointing. Um,
Oh, you do. That's interesting.
the inclusion, well,
Because like
just you
it's pretty. They're all
look at the
like not
form.
hard, but yeah, the
Everyone's
form.
coming in. Wales did not have a good Nations League. They got relegated. Um, we don't know at all what to think of Iran. They're led by a good coach, Carlos Queiroz, um, and they've got pretty good
Yeah.
attackers. Mehdi Taremi, which we've talking about.
Mm,
But Iran has all this like dysfunction happening behind the scenes. Like a lot of their players were protesting like the government, and there's talks that maybe even some of these players weren't going to be able to participate. So there's a lot of like
that'd be
stuff
nice. That'd be helpful.
happening with that. And
Mhm.
England didn't really have the best Nations League. Now, England
No,
obviously
they're
on
dreadful.
paper are maybe even one of the favorites for this whole thing.
I think
Um,
their FIFA rankings fifth. So
uh,
yeah, they probably are favorite. But if looking at the FIFA rankings, like Wales is like 20th. They're close. I think we're 18th. I want to say Wales and Iran are like very close. They're like 20th, basically both of them.
hmm.
And then England fifth. So like yeah, it's not a group of death, but like all I could see it's losing or dropping points to all three teams. To be honest with you,
Well, I could.
but maybe that's like the recent results
Because,
against Japan, come to mind, not playing well there. So maybe that's why, in Saudi Arabia. But
right,
yeah, it's. I mean,
I think that's
hard
more. I think that's more where the U.S. team is, not necessarily like the strength of
than
the
other
group.
teams.
Yeah.
That's a,
Um.
that's a good call. Yeah.
Yeah, well, another thing too is like, well, at least versus Japan and like that Saudi Arabia window. We didn't have Musa. Musa's going to come back. That he's going to make the midfield look a lot better. I assume.
Yeah, I
Um,
hope so.
I have this like weird theory that Christian Pulisic has not had the best 2 years. He hasn't had the best time at Chelsea, and he didn't really have a good World Cup qualifying. But sometimes like players just kind of like get into an environment where just everything clicks and they become like an absolute star. It kind of feels like that's everything's kind of setting up for that. Now maybe
Mm,
I'm reading too little too much into that, but I can think of like someone like Xherdan Shaqiri, who just anytime every 4 years when he plays for Switzerland, he looks like Messi for them. I'm not saying like necessarily that's going to happen, but if we do actually happen to have a good group stage at least, I think he's going to have to carry him because
yeah.
I don't really trust Jesus Ferreira leading us. I don't. Yeah, we saw the last window. We were Japan. Had no issues when it came to like turning us over. We were very bad keeping the ball. Um, you imagine, if you do that versus Wales or someone that can counter you. We just saw what Dan James can do.
Gosh, yeah.
That can be worrying. But I do want to talk a little bit about the inclusion of Haji Wright because this is a guy I wanted to actually see a little bit in the window. At least the that early that in the summer window. We just didn't.
Mhm.
He made the roster. He played versus Monaco, scored a PK. But he really didn't see much after him or of him after that. And I don't know if he was, he's actually on good form. He scored 9 goals for his last 12 games. And apparently he came in like the youth teams with like Pulisic and a couple of the others. But to not include Pepe is weird. And
It is.
I'm curious if, because Berhalter said what he did about Stefan, I'm curious if he did the same thing with here. He wanted a hierarchy. He didn't want Jesus Ferreira to feel someone was underneath him. Haji Wright
Mhm.
isn't going to be, regardless of how Ferreira does, I don't think Haji Wright is going to be on the stepping door to start. versus England
No,
if
yeah,
Vieira has a
yeah.
bad game. So that is kind of weird to me about that.
Oh, so you have Ferrer starting over Sargent up top?
I'd be shocked if
Maybe.
Sargent actually starts. Yeah,
Really? See, I would go. I mean, with the team they have, I would go Sargent
I
first.
would too. But I
But
just
or I mean, I've
it,
also seen weirdly Reyna up top, and you have Pulisic left and Aronson right, and it's almost just fitting, Reyna into the starting lineup because Reyna will probably be on the bench if you go, Sargent, Pulisic left, Aronson right.
see.
So I've seen that too, but
I would have done Weah, like Tim Weah, not Gia
oh, I've
Arena.
seen that. Yeah, I've seen Reyna up top, but Weah on the right
But we haven't
also with
we
Pulisic
haven't.
on the left.
It's just another thing too. I'm kind of worried about is Gia Arena has actually had a pretty good stint with Dortmund. He's been able to get back fit, and he's actually done well in a couple of Champions League games for them, scoring and assisting. I don't think he should be in the starting 11 because if he's going to be, he's going to have to take a spot at least in the attack. I don't think he's a midfielder, so he's got to
Right.
take Aronson's spot or Tim Weah's spot, and I'm worried
Hmm.
about that because
Yeah.
Weah and Aronson were our two best attackers in the qualifying win. They're the only reasons why we're even here.
Mm.
And so I don't know. That's just a little bit of what we're thinking about. I guess
Yeah.
that's both our take on the lineup and the roster. So we'll see about that, and we'll get started with our final EPL I guess recap. I guess till Christmas. So and we'll get started with a pretty good game. Man City and Brentford. This one surprisingly does end 2-1 in Brentford's favor. Man City didn't really have any changes in their starting 11 other than Holland returned to the starting lineup. The back line was Stones, Akanji, Laporte, and Cancelo. So you can maybe say maybe a surprise was Ruben Diaz being a healthy scratch. With Brentford went with something a little different. They went basically a 3-5-2 formation. It was Zanka, Pennick, and Ben Mee in the back with Roslev, Onyeka, Janelt, Jensen, and Rico Henry, and then Embremo and Tony up top. Um, and one of the I guess the main storylines in the game was Norgard ended up making a return in the second half, and De Silva and Weissa came on as well. As far as it the first couple of maybe 10 minutes or so, Brentford were actually the better team. It started off like really quickly. I mean, Brentford forced a couple of Ederson saves. It was a good example of Brentford's game plan just right out of the gates. Just a simple long ball to Tony that he was able to win. And Bremer wins the second header, and then Ricky Henry is able to play in a through ball to Onyeka, who's able to run by John Stones like he's not even there. And then Ederson had a save on Tony after Kevin De Bruyne misplaying a pass that Rico Henry was able to again run past Bernardo Silva. John Stones is completely out of position, so you saw how vulnerable Man City were on that side. And Ricky Henry crossed it. Ederson messed up on the cross, and then Mbeumo got the ball and crossed it to Tony. And again, Ederson made a save. So you saw the danger signs quite early, and then Brentford finally able to make that pay off. With basically, just a free kick kind of looped in that Ben Mee was able to win the first header, and then Tony won the second. But the main reason why the free kick happened is it's a pretty bad foul by Cancelo. There's no reason to foul him. He's like 40 yards away. Might even be in his own half. He just fouls Onyeka for no reason. And then what Brentford do is it's kind of weird. They have David Raya take the free kick, and then they have Tony and Embremo almost like lined up offsides. So the target was Ben Mee, and Ben Mee was able to win it. And then John Stones is able to play Tony on sides because John Stones did not have the best game in this one.
Hmm.
And then pretty much after that, City kind of did the usual thing, usual dominance. Phil Foden was able to get the goal at halftime with a pretty good kick after Brentford weren't able to clear it off a corner kick. Um, but you know, our buddy Jeremy is a pretty big Brentford fan, and he was really worried after Phil Foden got that goal and got the nerves to kind of come out. He thought the City were just going to explode in the second half, and so I don't know, Rex. We'll kind of pause it right there. What were your thoughts during all this?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was really nice to watch the first opening 10 minutes. Not only because Brentford had a lot of chances, but Tony scored early, which is important for them because they've had moments where they are on top and they don't score, and that ends up hurting them. So that was important. Also, you mentioned Stones didn't do that well. I didn't think Akanji did that well either.
Mhm.
He had his hands full with Tony, but it just seemed like Akanji could not win any 50-50 balls against Tony. And really, like Pep was lamenting this in the post game. He was lamenting the fact that Man City just couldn't win any deep balls. And that was a big reason why you saw Brentford score was they were able to win long balls and win a lot of them. So Pep wasn't happy about that. Akanji kind of manhandled by Tony. And then I thought it was great for Tony to kind of say to Southgate, "Oh, you should have picked me." Obviously, he probably didn't pick Tony because of kind of that betting allegations around him. Probably just didn't want that there. So I understand it. But it was nice to see Tony kind of have a good game and be like, "Hey, maybe Southgate, you should keep me on your radar at least."
I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting is, pretty much even the announcers were expecting City to just explode in the second half because basically Brentford weren't able to. You figured maybe Brentford would have to change their game plan a little bit because of the way that City were basically, they did what they normally do. They had the ball in the final third, controlling the game, and they were showing that they could finally score on set pieces. So like any kind of corner
Mhm.
kick, you'd have to worry about too. But something happened quite early on is Laporte got bloodied, and this basically took like 10 minutes for it to like patch him up a little bit. And what's kind of weird is I think even though there was going to be 10, everyone knew there was going to be 10, 15, whatever minutes of stoppage time. The closer it got to like the 70 and 80 mark, just I think on the mind kind of played with City's players' heads.
Mhm.
So it's possible that just and it felt like all the air went out of the stadium in the crowd after that, and so City didn't really create a ton of chances in that second half. And the more Brentford were able to just kind of stick with it, it seemed they did have a chance. There was even before Tony got the game winner. Brentford were able to, and again, this came from a long ball from David Rea, that Brentford were able to win the first header. Um, there was a square ball, I think, from Onyeka to. It looked like Tony had a tap in, and Laporte actually had an amazing goal line clearance, which it was kind of
Mhm.
amazing. He didn't even like kick it in his own net. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Yeah,
it's just.
Tony almost scored a third too, and it was a great save by Ederson.
Mhm.
So yeah, it could have been worse for City.
But the Brentford do get the go ahead goal in the 90th minute. Man City have a corner kick. They have everyone pushed up to try to score this winner, and basically they're caught off. They're caught on the counter. Weiss is able to beat Kevin De Bruyne on a loose ball. I think it's just Gundogan and maybe a Kanji is like the only two that are back. Holland's able to run back towards the end, but Weiss does a good job to carry the ball, and then he squares it to De Silva. I thought Silva actually kind of messed up here, but he was able to take Akanji 1v1, get by him, and then plays a very good ball that Tony's able to just kind of tap in. The thing that's interesting here is it seemed like Holland and everyone else was really focused on Rico Henry, and everyone just kind of missed Tony making a disguise run a little bit behind Gundogan, and
Yeah,
so. Sometimes we've seen that a lot actually lately, where teams are really focused on where the ball is, and they're not actually worried about tracking the runner where the runners are, and it showed up here.
yeah, ball watching.
And so, the first takes, Tony double, Holland blanked, but I think it was you saw real two complete contrast in styles, and really you see that in the shots. I mean, 29 shots, 6 on target. Brentford had 10 shots and 8 on target. So Brentford only had 25% of the ball and still had more shots on target. So sometimes that possession stats and passing it doesn't really matter. Really what matters is getting good looks on goal. I mean, the XG was
Yeah.
about even too.
And Brentford have a couple of those games where you look at their possession and how many passes they had, and it's not good, but they managed to get a result. And yeah, sometimes it is down to like maybe just better finishing because City had a decent amount of shots, but like you said, not as much on target. Brentford did better with fewer chances.
And we're gonna touch on both because this will be our like I guess our feature game that we're talking about. Um, you mentioned the passing, the 123 passing with 57%. I was
Hmm.
texting Jeremy. I was really worried about this because they kept going long all the time, and sometimes it was coming off, but more times they were just giving the ball away. I did think that was going to be an issue. I was worried about them not being able to keep possession. But you know, maybe I was just wrong because it seemed whenever they were able to win that header, they were looking dangerous. So.
Hmm. Yeah, able to win those deep balls, at least enough to continue pumping it downfield, I
Mhm.
guess.
And what's kind of funny is we've seen this now with this game, also with that Man United game, where it almost seems like it's better for them to play like these upper teams. It seems like they maybe struggle a little bit more with clubs kind of like closer to them, where Thomas Frank feels like he has to play a more attacking lineup to take the game to him. In this case, they're able to kind of sit back, play counter ball, go long, and do things that way. And it feels like they were back to their 3-5-2 that we saw a lot last year, and it just seemed they were maybe more comfortable. I mean, they were very good defensively in this game, where
Yeah.
sometimes they haven't necessarily always been. And you can maybe credit Ben Mee for that. So I mean, what were your general takes, I guess, with Brentford and how they played?
Yeah, Ben Mee was solid, and he's had a couple games where he's been really good, especially early on when he was kind of bought at the end of the window and inserted in without too much time with the team, and he did well. But yeah, I don't for me, I don't know about you, but Holland didn't seem 100% healthy either.
Mm.
I mean, not a big deal because he is going to be healthy after the month and a half off from the World Cup. But yeah, he didn't necessarily seem 100% to me. And then I think you kind of got a view of why Raya is in the Spain squad instead of De Gea, and it might be because Raya's better with his feet, and you mentioned it in this game, a lot of really good long balls, pinpoint long balls by Raya. So maybe that's why he's in the Spain team instead of De Gea, which was it's a shock, but maybe that's why because he can play with his feet.
Yeah, Pepe even talked about that. He said Red Ryer was too good. He even praised him, with saying his name. And we'll maybe get to him, for another team, coming up as far as maybe someone should look at him. That's going to upset our buddy Jeremy. But anyways, well, one thing I did want to say is both of Brentford's wing backs were very good this game. So it's one thing to play a back three. Sometimes that can be or back five. That can be seen as anti-football and defensive. But that can change if your wing backs are really good at getting forward. You saw Roslev, do a job on Foden, towards the end, and Rico Henry was very good whenever he was able to get the ball. And it's kind of funny looking at England's roster, looking at um, the missing Chilwell. Maybe Trippier is going to play on the right, or maybe he can do a job on the left. But after Trippier, it's maybe Luke Shaw, who I don't think has had a good season for United. I think maybe
Yeah,
Rico Henry could have gotten a look for Southgate, and another guy. The talk's going to be Tony getting snubbed. I think Ben Mee is a better center back and has had a better season than Eric Dyer.
yeah,
And it's one of
and
those things
maybe
where
Connor Cody too.
Dyer got right, and Connor Cody's a little different because he is on Everton, but Dyer got picked because he's on Spurs, and no other
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. And he's had a mini revival under Conte, but I kind of contribute that to like Conte's defensive minded game more so than Dyer.
And so, I mean, we mentioned it last week. It's almost like one of those things where because we talked about how it wasn't like your typical like Man City game. Yeah, they had the possession. Yeah, they had the 29 shots, but not a lot of them were actually good quality looks. I think you're starting to see this more and more where it seems they are really struggling to have a creator outside of Kevin De Bruyne. And even De Bruyne is someone that needs guys to make runs for him. He's not really going to take people 1v1 himself. I think they're really missing someone like Jesus to be able to just kind of dribble by people. So the decision to let him go is looking weirder and weirder, or not to bring someone in because Phil Foden is not a guy that is going to take someone out wide and offer width. He's going to try to cut inside all the time. Same with Grealish. Bernardo Silva's been played at right wing now. This could have been a game where I think maybe Mahrez would have been a better outlook. And it seems if there is kind of a struggle or maybe a vulnerability to City, we'll move on to City now. It is maybe that they do not have guys on the wings that are able to beat people 1v1 to maybe kind of change some of this boxed outlook because
Mm.
it was relatively easy for Brentford just kind of cut off the supply, cut off the crosses to Holland, and they were able to kind of stay with him. I think Holland only had one shot, and it wasn't on target this game.
Mm. Yeah. And well, the thing that is really weird to me, yeah, I mean, letting go of Jesus, I get that a little bit more because I believe that Jesus wanted to be the main guy up top, and Pep couldn't necessarily offer him that, and Arteta could.
Hmm.
But I mean, for me, they should have kept Sterling. I think he would have been perfect for him.
Sterling would be a
And
good one too. Mhm.
maybe in hindsight too, Sterling's kind of thinking the same thing because he hasn't really gotten off the ground at Chelsea. But yeah, I feel like he would have been the perfect player this year, especially because he does take on players out wide. He's so fast. So yeah, I mean, but you mentioned it. Maybe Mahrez is the guy that can do that because he's a speedster too, and we didn't see him. Kind of weird. We only saw one sub from Pep. That's kind of his mo the last couple years. But yeah, I mean, I think Mahrez could have possibly broken this game open as a second half sub potentially. But yeah, I completely agree. They need someone wide. Maybe they'll pick him up in the window. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see if Sterling stayed, what he would be doing on the wing, crossing into Holland. It'd be interesting to see what his stats would have been.
I mean, and another thing to maybe talk about is, I got the sense in that Newcastle game, and we saw it again here, where sometimes when Pep plays Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne on the same side, now that can look really, really good when you have the ball and you're offensively. But if you lose it, Kevin De Bruyne is not necessarily going to track back, and Bernardo Silva doesn't really have the pace to do that either. And you saw them vulnerable. You saw that versus Newcastle. Now that was with Alan St. Maximin. But here,
Mhm.
they were vulnerable when Rico Henry was able to get the ball. You don't have that protection with Kyle Walker. Now, maybe with him back, that does kind of change a little bit. But another thing I was thinking about is the way that Brentford were just almost bullying City in these aerial duels. You did kind of see that other than Rodri, they don't really have anyone physical in midfield. And I remember that would being an issue when they played Real Madrid. And so,
Mm.
if they were matched up and someone like Napoli in the Champions League, this could be, it's possible they would struggle with that as well. So,
Mm.
there's all this talk about who they're linked to. Um, I, I haven't seen. I think there've been reports that they're linked to Bellingham, but Bellingham to Madrid doesn't make sense. Bellingham to Man City does, for this reason: is he would give them help with that significantly, and you're probably going to lose Gundogan on a free next year. Um,
Yeah.
so it just
And Silva might be gone too. Who knows?
yeah, and I think Silva works
Uh,
better in midfield than
yeah, me too.
necessarily on the wing, and you saw that a little bit as kind of a second half change. You saw Bernardo Silva next to Rodri. So.
You know what this game reminded me of, and you kind of saying that brought it to my mind, but it kind of reminds me of like when it's probably like 2010s, a little bit earlier, like Arsenal versus Stoke, where Stoke just knows they can't play they can't play the passing game that Arsenal can, but they're bigger and they're more physical, and there's if you're a smaller dribbler, let's say, or a good ball passer, there's nothing throws you off more than a big, strong, physical team, bumping into you, fouling you all the time. So yeah, they kind of took that kind of playbook and it worked. And yeah, like you said, like City doesn't necessarily have big, strong players that like to be physical. They kind of have the smaller, more technical players. So it's perfect. It's a perfect game plan to come in there, throw them off their game, beat them up a little bit, and just play to your strengths, which is long balls. And yeah, it worked. And Thomas Frank doesn't. I guess he doesn't care if the passing and possession is there. He doesn't care how bad that looks as long as they're getting wins.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this really City is unique in this respect. Brentford trying this versus kind of like a club close to them that maybe even like Fulham. You imagine it wouldn't necessarily work as well. But one thing that's weird is City attempted 36 crosses this game. They were trying to force the ball to Holland when he just he was draped with bodies over him. Um, Again, I thought the same way when they played Liverpool. City played Liverpool. They were just forcing it to him. They've almost become too reliant on him, and it's weird because the last couple of games they haven't had him because of the injury. It really does. Like I feel like last year this wouldn't have been a problem for them because they were getting goals and
Mhm.
contributions from everyone in the squad. When you look at who's scoring the goals, Foden has 7, but Kevin De Bruyne has 3. But after that, it's just a couple guys with 2, and really no one else.
Mhm.
Holland's gotten all of their goals. That's the reason why he has like 18 or whatever the number is.
Yeah,
So you
that's a good point.
it's something for Pep to kind of think about.
Mm.
How are they too Holland focused? And another thing too is, are they too Kevin De Bruyne focused? Because when De Bruyne is not able to make assists for Holland, where's the creation coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, the midfield creation. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think maybe them just pumping the balls in too from crosses to Holland might have just been due also to just frustration because they're getting shut down kind of, um, and they don't really, know what to do. Like, well, let's just go wide and cross into our beast in the middle.
Hmm.
Kind of like derift of ideas
Yes,
almost.
exactly.
Which
Hmm.
it's not a bad plan. And maybe if Holland's like 100%, maybe it's a different result. But yeah, it definitely shows maybe lacking a little bit of like creativity from other places, like you mentioned. Because
And
if you do shut down De Bruyne and Gundogan doesn't have a good game, where's the good midfield balls? Where are those going to come from?
And that's why I think Bernardo Silva works better in midfield than necessarily being forced to be your false right winger.
Mm.
Instead of getting the ball out there and trying to create, and Bernardo Silva did a couple of times. Um, two things to kind of end on is, it is weird Pep continues to only make one sub in a game. I just it was funny in the beginning. Now it really is just straight weird. And the sub he did was he took off Cancelo for Alvarez. Basically played Foden at left back to that last 10 minutes in the
Yeah.
game. Um, another thing we should say is, City did have a couple breaks to go their way the last couple of weeks. Got we talked about it last week with Fulham. I thought they kind of gamed a PK versus Brighton a couple weeks before that, and in this
Mhm.
game, it was like the first time where they didn't get that kind of luck to go their way. It seemed every
Yeah, and they tried.
every 50-50 decision went against them, and a couple of them
Mhm.
I was really shocked by. Like, there was a handball on Rico Henry that I'm pretty stunned. It's if he's not on the line, he is an inch from it. Um,
Yeah.
there's not enough to overturn that. So if that's given, and it looks like in real time it could have been given, that's not overturned. Holland was throwing himself to the ground anytime they had a corner kick. That was annoying. And
That
Kevin De
was annoying
Bruyne
for sure.
dove, but there is contact, and they were getting stuff like this, a couple of weeks ago. So it was interesting
Yeah.
how, for once they didn't get that luck
Mhm.
to go their way, and
Yeah,
Brentford
thankfully.
benefited.
Yeah, I read in the last 5 minutes, City had 4 appeals for PKs. So yeah, it's kind of annoying to watch, honestly, Ben. I'm with you because I'm not, City's not my team, so it was annoying to watch because it looked like they were just trying to get a PK, any contact at all. They're going down. They're not staying on their feet. So I was happy it wasn't rewarded this time, but you can't blame them for doing it because it got them a result last week. So
Right.
I don't blame the players. I blame the refs for giving the penalties, but fair play to the ref on this one for not. And it was nice because they were really trying to get a PK in the last 5 minutes. Because I really wanted them to drop points, and I like Brentford, so
Well, I was
it was
gonna
kind of nervy, but
I was gonna
nervy
say,
last 5 minutes.
you said City's not your team. You had double rooting interest in this game,
That's right. That's right.
because you like Brentford, but also this helps with Arsenal. Man City
Oh
have now
yeah.
5 points to make up. And one thing that's kind of wild is City's starting 11 versus Brentford. Everyone but Holland is on a World Cup roster. You even mentioned how they have the most in the EPL.
Yeah.
So it's possible
16.
they're going to have real fatigue when
Hmm.
they return. So that might be
Absolutely.
something to follow. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Because they have some like Stones is on the England team, and you wouldn't necessarily expect that per se. So like yeah, like Gundogan, Foden, everyone but Holland. Yeah.
mhm. And so, speaking of, we will move on to our next game with Wolves and Arsenal. You kind of mentioned how you thought it was maybe a slip up game, and I agree. And it was almost like business-like. This is where you can kind of see, because it's at Wolves, hostile environment. They just announced the Lopetegui hire. You imagine maybe this is going to be maybe a last hurrah for their caretaker, or maybe Lopetegui could have inspired them. And Wolves didn't really create anything at all this game. They sat in the box, and they basically played counter ball with Adama and Guedes, and they were able to get into some interesting spots, but you kind of see why they've struggled to score this entire season. Once they got near goal, their finishing was really poor. Um, I
Yeah.
think that maybe the headline was Granit Xhaka having to go off after 8 minutes, and Fabio Vieira came on for him. And so this was the first chance to really see it, maybe a different Arsenal. It is interesting too. For the last couple of weeks, we've seen Arteta switch to basically a 4-3-3 formation every single game week now. I saw that versus Chelsea. You saw it here. I didn't know if Odegaard could play in that kind of role, and he's kind of shutting me up because this is maybe Odegaard's best game for you guys in a while. So
Yeah.
we'll just kind of get started there. I mean, what were your thoughts with this Arsenal game?
Yeah, it did seem like a banana skin because we know that Wolverhampton is tough to score on too. So I figured they would kind of do what they did last week and sit back and counter with Adama and Guedes. And Guedes actually had a couple chances. He probably could have scored. Sometimes it was, like you said, Saliba making a mistake in the back and he pounces on it.
Mhm.
So some of them were kind of Arsenal's fault. But yeah, I thought they looked good going in attack. They just didn't have their shooting boots. And then, yeah, you mentioned Shaka. I was worried because I didn't know what happened, but it seems like he's fine. It was just a stomach bug that was going around. I dug into it, and originally people thought that it was a pregame meal that made some people sick,
Hmm.
but I think it's just a stomach bug because Arteta said four players were suffering from it, and we didn't see Nketiah for the first time, even though he was on the bench, and we didn't see Tierney even though he was on the bench. So I suspect those two were also struggling with it. But yeah, it was good to see that Shaka wasn't hurt because he's another one heading out to the World Cup. So there was
Yeah.
concern there, but it seems like he's fine, just a stomach bug. But that I think just adds more to this business like when you kind of find out that some players that if they're not starting, they're bid part players coming off the bench. They were sick and they were still able to grind out this win. So that's big. But we always talk about Jesus too. It's now 11 games without scoring. He's playing well. He's playing really well, but just not getting the goals. And I do think that'll come back to haunt them maybe in the second half of the season if he's not scoring.
Mhm.
But he does have a chance to kind of play out of it with Brazil. All it takes is one goal. If he scores, he might get on a hot streak. So I think for Jesus, I think the World Cup and for Arsenal, the World Cup's coming at a good time because, I mean, he can't get any worse. He's already not scored in 11. He does have the assist, though. I'm not like saying he's a bad player at all, but
Mhm.
he does need to get out of the rut. So I think this is kind of a nice chance for him to do it for Brazil, hopefully. But yeah, it was good. And the Odegaard, yeah, like you said, best game. White actually didn't have a good game, and he's going to the World Cup for England.
Mhm.
He actually didn't play that well. And then Gabriel played really well too. So it was good. It was good to see, and it ensures that Arsenal will be in first place over the Christmas period, which is nice. And just a little chance to kind of like rest and recuperate because with them playing on Sunday and City playing on Saturday, it's a lot of the times City win, so we have to win to stay on the league, or if City drop points, we need to capitalize and win to gain more points. So it's always like a pressure loaded situation for them. So it's nice just mentally to kind of relax for a little bit and not be in that stressful we have to win this game kind of mode.
That's a good point because it was the late game on Saturday, and you had a lot of time to sit over Man City during that performance, and you wonder, it is a young squad. You didn't know if that was maybe going to factor in, like, oh my God, we must take points. And
Mm.
you saw none of, no, you didn't see any kind of nerves at all. I do want to touch at least on one of the goals, basically the first one, because it starts with Martinelli basically dancing with the ball, in the middle of the field. Now, he's your left winger. He gets past two challenges. He keeps the ball, and then he takes on another challenge that he's able to get by. He gets Zinchenko the ball out wide. Zinchenko then finds Jesus, who basically takes Martinelli's spot on the left wing, and then that's when he cuts inside and quickly feeds in Fabio Vieira, who made a very clever run, and he was
Mm.
able to square it for Odegaard. It is very good for Fabio Vieira to come in and already to kind of help out, at least contribute in that sense. But I just think one thing that was weird is you saw this a lot too. Is there were times when soccer was playing in middle. Martinelli, and anytime that happened, Jesus was going out wide. So you can maybe get away with him kind of doing this because as long as you still have numbers forward, or you at least you're replacing someone else. So what I saw is a very fluid attack, and maybe some
Mm.
ways we haven't necessarily seen so far. I think that changing to a 4-3-3 allows you to do this as opposed to that 4-2-3-1 that we've kind of seen sometimes.
Mm.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of ability to play different styles, and like you said, like Jesus is comfortable playing up top, but we saw him at City play out wide, so he can switch over there, and switch places with like players, and no problem there. So yeah, that's nice. It's everyone's kind of interchangeable. And we kind of originally saw it with Shaka's new role, like being freed up a little bit and how it worked. And now we're starting to see it, with other people too, which is great. Yeah, they need that.
And you get the second goal by just Martinelli being really clever. He loses the ball after Partey kind of gets it to him, but he sticks with it and he's able to force the turnover by Dexter Lebicasa, I think. Just kind of I think a young sub that came on for Wolves. Maybe he's just trying to. He doesn't want to give up a throw in or whatever. He's kind of pinned. He tries to clear it, and Martinelli's able to steal it off him. Then he gets Zinchenko the ball with a really good back heel, and then Zinchenko is actually really clever here. He doesn't just cross it in on his first touch. He takes a couple of touches in the box to kind of get Wolves defenders to kind of freak out, and maybe lose sight of what happens. And what happens is after the ball is squared in, and after there's a rebound shot, Odegaard gets the ball and he's completely unmarked because again, everyone on Wolves is worried about the ball and where it's going. No one's tracking the runner, and Wolves has he's in the box and there's no one within 8 yards of him. Kind of
Yeah,
and it's a really good finish.
yeah, yeah. Odegaard was on point.
And so let's see. You kind of mentioned it a little bit. I mean, I guess we can talk a little bit about Wolves. Even there's really not a lot to say. I feel like as I mentioned, you kind of see why they do kind of struggle a little bit. Um, well, I mean, what do you think Lopetegui can do or should do? You saw them change. You saw them go with a different formation and actually feature Adama a little bit. Do you think they should maybe stick with that, or did this not work at all?
Yeah, I mean, I do like the combo of Adama and Guedes up top,
Hmm.
and then we did see some chances. I think if Guedes has a better day finishing, they score at least once. So I think I like that combo going up. But Lopetegui is going to have to probably make a decision, and he's going to have to possibly sacrifice some defense in order to get more offense. So that might mean like more attacking players, less defensive players on the field. But it's going to have to be a good balance because yeah, they need more goals, but you don't want to concede too much either. And if they go and attack too much, they might get more goals, but they might concede more. So Lopetegui is really going to have to find a good balance because they do they have a pretty decent defensive record,
Hmm.
but he definitely needs to get more goals. He just can't do it. He can't do it at the cost of conceding more, because that's all they have really right now is defense. So yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough. But I do think Geddes and Adama as your two up top going forward is a nice little base, and then maybe Jimenez comes back healthy. Maybe Costa can add something.
Well, I think
I feel like we've been saying that for a while, but
maybe Neto could feature. There are a couple of times where Gredes was at least through on goal where it just felt, maybe Neto with a better finish on him could have gotten Arsenal some fits. I mean, they had 11 shots, only two on target.
yeah.
I think you kind of saw that. There was maybe a shout for a PK that I don't know if it's Saliba that goes to ground, but yeah, Guedes was through on goal, and Arsenal able to kind of get away with it because I think the linesman assumed it was offsides, so that didn't really
Mhm.
matter. But it was close. It was close when he got
Yeah.
brought down. But
Oh yeah.
that was really like kind of the only danger. And I'm looking now. Arsenal with 14 shots, only four on target. So that gets to your point about maybe Jesus kind of finishing a little bit better. But the way he was able to, at least for that first goal, the way he was able to get the ball from the wing and then to cut inside and then to play the pass when he did. If he waits, the area is offside. That's the kind of
Mhm.
stuff that like City was missing, and so
Right. Yeah.
that's just yeah.
And he
It,
presses hard, and
he's
but
still he's still working out for you guys.
I do have this stat, and it's kind of a weird stat, and I was just looking around on the Premier League website. But Jesus has 8 missed goal chances according to the EPL website, and I mean it wasn't terrible. All your good strikers that score a ton were up there for
Hmm.
misses. Like Haaland had a couple too, but you know, he had a couple good chances in this game too that he didn't score. And a lot of time he's putting it on target a lot. It's just right at the keeper.
Yep.
So that's just more to I think he's close to bringing his finishing back. But like you mentioned, like he just presses. He does whatever the coach wants him to do. He's good link up play. He takes players on, and if he doesn't score, he's getting assist at least. So yeah, but I just thought that was kind of a weird stat. It's kind of like I think it was like he's 10th for most goals that most scoring opportunities missed. He's like 10th, so it's not terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, just more into if he finishes a little better, he's getting in the positions at least.
And I don't think he's hiding. So that's good as well. I mean, early in the game, he actually did put the ball in the net. It was just offsides, but it was a pretty good
That was a
finish.
good
He
finish.
was able to
Yeah, yeah,
take the ball down, and it had a hard finish. There was another time
yeah. I
when
agree.
Saka was able to feed him the ball. I don't know if he was offside or not. He was able to beat the keeper, but it just it just barely flicked off the
Yeah.
crossbar.
It,
So
it feels like one of those things where if he scores one, then
I think so.
the
Yeah.
Avalanche will kind of break, and yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
totally.
All right, and we'll move on to Newcastle and Chelsea. This one ends 1-0. More bad news for Graham Potter. The Newcastle 11 was about similar, though. Chris Wood was played instead of Callum Wilson after Callum Wilson was able to make the team. He wasn't fit enough for the at least for the starting 11. And then Joe Linton
Hmm.
returned, which I think really helped out. Um,
Hmm.
for Chelsea, it was a little different. As Laqueta, Chalaba, and Koulibaly started, though that didn't really last that long. Ruben Loftus-Cheek was supposed to be the wingback. He was only able to go like 4 minutes, and that just changed everything that I think Potter wanted to do. Probably the main storyline though was Lewis Hall getting his head start or first start,
Yeah.
and he played pretty well versus Man City in the League Cup game. But in this game, I think you saw you having to rely on this 18-year-old. You already see you really see where Chelsea is at the moment.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then
yeah.
Gallagher and
Desperate for
Mount
wingbacks.
as the two guys up front with Broya, and that didn't really work out at all either.
No. No, and I like Potter at least going with Broja up top instead of Aubameyang
Mhm.
because we did think in cameo appearances he offered more, but yeah, this did not work. But I give credit for Potter for at least trying it because Aubameyang wasn't working out. I just he got it wrong today, but at least he tried to change some things. And I thought Hall he definitely looked overwhelmed, but I think he's one for the future potentially. He held his own for sure. I mean,
Mhm.
he definitely looked overwhelmed. 18 years old. I mean, who can blame him? But yeah, one for the future potentially. But it's also Newcastle didn't necessarily play their best game, and they still held Chelsea to like 4 shots. Like Chelsea's offense didn't do
Right.
anything.
I mean, it's maybe I don't know if it's necessarily smoke and mirrors because Arsenal and Newcastle are very very good teams at the minute, but both of them holding Chelsea to five both. Only 2 shots on target. They didn't really create anything at all this game. Um,
Yeah,
and like you saying, Newcastle with Chris Wood is not Newcastle with Callum Wilson, and
yeah,
he only had 20 touches all game. Where Wilson is a striker, but he can do that link up. He can do that creative stuff. And
oh yeah,
if there was maybe a negative, it was Bruno Guimaraes was only 5 of 16 for his ground duels. Chelsea were able to actually win the midfield battle and had the majority of the possession.
yeah,
They just were not able to do anything with it. And Newcastle, to their credit, didn't really care about that. They were just really good at pressing Chelsea whenever Chelsea were trying to build the ball off from the back because Chelsea didn't have anyone to go long, and they were very poor passing from the back.
oh
I
yeah,
do think losing Loftus Cheek when they did, they completely screwed up the way Potter wanted to play because it forced Azpilicueta to go to wing back. That meant basically you lost any kind of offensive output on that side, and Azpilicueta isn't really good defensively these days anymore either.
yeah,
He was afraid to take anyone on. Willock was getting by him for fun, and it forced you to play Thiago Silva again, and Thiago Silva just looks off it whenever he plays now. If he starts for Brazil, I think that's going to be an issue. So
mm,
there might be something to say, but we will get to the goal.
yeah,
Um, it's a very good goal by Joe Willock, but the goal really comes from the star man at the moment for Newcastle, Miguel Almiron. Um, he was able to get the ball on the right side. He takes on Koulibaly. Koulibaly was nursing a hamstring, it looked like, at the minute, so you can maybe excuse a little of that. But he takes a heavy touch, but Willock is basically uh, is basically right there, and he's able to kind of step inside and has a great curling finish. I mean, outside the box, I can't really blame Mendy for this. But I think the
mm,
problem here is it's just a hopeful ball looped in by Joe Linton, and Lewis Hall thinks Koulibaly has it covered. So instead of going over to help, he stays to kind of be on the wing side to maybe be like a passing outlet. And what happens is because the ball is so high, Almiron has to wait for it to drop down. I think if Hall had rushed to get there, he would have been able to help out. And because so yeah, again, he's young, and that's just that can come with learning. It's
yeah,
possible Koulibaly without that hamstring injury because he went down a little bit before this. Maybe he's able to stop this also, but he doesn't. But another problem too is Thiago Silva. When Joe Willock is about to shoot, Thiago Silva goes down to like try to stop it. Basically 8 feet away, when Willock had to take a touch. So it's possible
Mhm.
he would have been able to, if he'd tried to sprint out, he may have been able to block that as well. So that was interesting. Or
Yeah.
when, yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I'm around though. I wish Paraguay was in the World Cup so we could see him kind of like continue
I do
this
too
form
because
because
I
yeah,
want
you mentioned in
him.
the script like we want to see if he can keep it up, right?
Well, I
And
do not
now
want
that
to
he's
see it.
off, it's like a terrible time for him for
I
the
do.
World Cup. But
I do not want to see him keep it up. I don't think you do either because they play a certain team
yeah,
when they come back.
that's true. But I was just looking at his stats. Um, last 5 games he has a goal or an assist in each one, and then his last 9 games he has 7 goals and 1 assist. So I mean, even though yeah they're creeping up on Arsenal, I still admire Almiron. He's a player that has had struggles for Newcastle, so it's nice to kind of see him, break out of the struggles
Mhm.
and kind of get his due diligence. And he's starting to start for the team, which is great to see because he really did struggle at first, and you know the Newcastle fans were kind of on him early on in his career,
Oh, not
saying he
just
was a bust from the MLS. But yeah, now he's starting to round into really nice form.
not just Newcastle fans. I don't know if you remember this, but Jack Grealish, after Man City won the won the title last year, he was making fun of like it was either Mahrez or Bernardo Silva, and he basically said, this guy was playing like that guy Miguel Almiron,
Oh,
as kind of like a ding, and he like did it on social media, because the guy, whoever I don't think it was from Mars that he was referring to. It looks like Grealish is drunk beyond belief at this
he
moment.
probably is, yeah.
But because Man City didn't necessarily play that best game versus Aston Villa, everyone remembers. Yeah, it's just weird how ever since that moment, the complete opposite has happened. Miguel Almiron is the player that people thought Jack Grealish was going to be. Um,
Yeah, they flipped roles, and Trippier too has been absolutely fantastic. I think he's for me he's the Newcastle star man this year. He makes them tick. He just does everything, and they've got a bunch of clean sheets. Pope has a bunch of clean sheets.
well, that's
He's leading the race for Golden Glove.
That's
So
what's annoying too. Is like their defense is super great. Frankly, everyone is really good on the ball. You can mention Trippier as well. I mean, I don't think Botman's lost a game when he started, but even when you can get some looks on them, you've got Pope Masterclass you have to get through. That like he
yeah,
was able to keep Burnley up all those years because I remember anytime Liverpool would play and Pope would have like 10 saves with them. He
yeah,
he, he just makes he's such a good shot stopper. It's annoying. Now he's not the best with his feet, but it is that is a very good buy for them, and it's shocking that
yeah,
no one else was trying to get him. So
yeah.
again,
Because he was
good for
he
Hal.
was down in the championship. Yeah, so they just went down and raided the championship. It was really smart. Yeah,
And another thing that's really annoying about Newcastle is this feels sustainable. They press the way Liverpool press. I've mentioned that before. They cover so much ground, and they've got dual winners everywhere. But they only play once a week. As long
yeah.
as they don't suffer injuries, it's going to be pretty easy for them to just continue playing this way.
And they're gonna have Isaac back.
Isaac and
St.
Alison
Maximin's already
Maxian,
back.
huh?
Yeah, he didn't play, but he'll be back in full health after the World Cup. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a little scary for the teams that are above Newcastle. I mean, what is Newcastle in fourth? So there's only 3 teams above them. But yeah, I expect them to continue the rest of the year because now we kind of have seen even if they have injuries to some of their star men, they can kind of plug and play. So yeah, I mean this and the January window, we don't know what they're going to do there either. So yeah, I mean they're charging in the top four, maybe even putting on a title challenge in the second half of the season. I don't know. Who knows?
If they can get just a little bit better passing the ball, I think so. I mean, I had that take before the Southampton game, and that one kind of freaked me out a little bit. But again, I see a lot of what Klopp's Liverpool teams used to look like, which does scare me. Now that is with Callum Wilson playing, not necessarily Chris Wood. But if Wilson can stick on and continue doing this, Alan St. Maxian can look like Monty at times. Now he's not. He can look amazing at times and also look like a complete "what are you doing" player at times. But
Yeah.
in 1v1s, he is a nightmare, and in space he is a nightmare. Um,
Yeah, and he'll take people on. At the very least, you bring him on as a sub if nothing's going on. It's 0-0. You can't do
uh
anything. You bring it on him as a sub, and he'll make things happen. He'll take players on. He's got a good shot. He's obviously got pace, good ball control. Yeah, he's so even just coming off the bench, they got options.
And just, I mean, even the only thing I can think of is like maybe St. Maximin won't do the defensive work that Joe Linton does because him and Joe Willock have such a good understanding. That's when I mentioned they cover so much ground. Is they don't need Dan Burn to necessarily go up and be offensive minded. I mean, that's maybe the one maybe interesting thing about the Liverpool comparison. They've got Trippier doing what Trent does. They don't have Dan Burn doing what Robinson does, and
Yeah.
they don't need it. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Good call.
I mean, to focus a little bit on Chelsea, I think a couple of teams are really upset that this break is happening. I can think of uh, Leicester, maybe being one. One of them,
Yeah.
one of these teams that's really glad that this break is happening. I think is Chelsea, because Potter just needs, I think, to get his guys back healthy again.
Yeah.
Because other than that, I really don't know what he can do. Because the roster is so reliant on getting progression from the wingbacks, and right now, you're playing a kid, and
They're all out.
you're
Yeah.
having to play Azpilicueta who doesn't have legs anymore.
Hmm. Yeah. I do kind of feel like once they get Reece James back and maybe even Chilwell, they'll kind of we said last week they'll be a different team for sure. So yeah, it's a perfect time for the World Cup to come for them. And they've only won one out of their last five too. So yeah, it's good timing, and hopefully they can get some people back healthy because they are a different team when they have Reece James and Chilwell.
And it's just another worrying thing too is we're focusing on the defense. But really, Havertz hasn't necessarily worked out. Sometimes he's in
Yeah,
the lineup, sometimes he's not. Aubameyang hasn't really worked out. Sterling has gotten really, really cold, and we don't really see Pulisic that much. Um,
yeah,
frankly, what's annoying too is, well, I don't say annoying, but concerning is I don't really know if you can play Mount and Conor Gallagher together at the same time because they seem to kind
yeah.
of want to do the same things
It
and offer
didn't
the same
yeah, it didn't
spaces.
work in this one.
Um,
And Chelsea too have only scored 17 goals, which is, I mean, like Leicester scored more than them. Bournemouth has scored more than them. A bunch of teams have scored. Fulham has scored more than them. So, yeah. Also at the top end, people aren't. Aubameyang's not working out. Broja seems good at times, but maybe just not enough. And it's kind of weird because like last year they had Lukaku, Havertz, Werner. They seem kind of stacked at striker,
I
and
think
now that's a big problem, big
I
part of
think
the problem for
I
them.
think Chelsea is significantly missing Werner's runs, and everyone got on him for maybe not being the best finisher. Maybe he looked lost in front of goal, but you're able to stretch the field with him, and you don't. Now you were able to
Yeah,
do that also with the wingbacks. Chilwell and James were offering that, and you don't have that anymore. That's why I almost do think you need Brocha to play because if nothing else, he can at least make some runs and at least kind of stretch a back line. Because
yeah,
again, Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher, even like Pulisic aren't really going to do that for you. Maybe Sterling would, but weren't able to play Sterling this game.
mm,
But another thing I saw is I came across a stat where the fewest starting 11 changes so far in the season. So Arsenal were fewest with 11. Man City and Newcastle were in the 20s. Liverpool was like 39, so they've had to make 39 changes. And Liverpool had a bunch of like injury issues. Chelsea had 52. So that
ooh,
just goes to see how much like either Potter or even Tuchel before him have had to operate on the squad week to week. It seems.
yeah. And that instability, it's hard to like get used to your teammates and play well with them when it's different people every week. And sometimes you do need that rotation, obviously, but it's nice to have like your normal 11 or at least your normal like 10, and we'll change one or two people, but yeah, and changing the manager too halfway through the season doesn't help things either because you got to get used to a whole new system. Maybe different players are favored as well. So yeah, it's tough for them, and
Maybe training's
like
different. Mhm.
training's different. Yeah, exactly. Maybe injuries come up there too because maybe like Tuchel wasn't as hard in training as like Potter. Who knows? So yeah, it's a good time for the World Cup for them, and I do want to see them like at least get Reece James back and start to put some more pressure up because they're dropped down to ninth now. And a couple weeks ago they were like solidly in the top four.
And you imagine they've spent so much money. Um, you imagine that I don't know if they're going to spend again in January too. But if they don't make Champions League, financial fair play might actually come into effect.
Ooh, good
So
call.
you'd worry about a little bit about that. Now they are. if they get everyone healthy, we mentioned that last week, they'll be a hard out. Um,
Mhm.
so
Or they're eighth. My bad. They're not ninth. They're eighth, but they're looking 8 points out of the top four right now. So yeah, it's already a pretty steep mountain to climb.
and it's pretty crazy too because before that Arsenal was it Arsenal?
Yeah.
Potter basically went. No, it was Brighton. Brighton was the first game he lost.
Oh, right.
They had a couple
He's
draws
up
here and
three in a
there.
row.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 draws and 3 losses in a row. Ugh.
All right, and we'll move on to Spurs and Leeds. This was another great game, at least for the neutral. This was not a great game if you're a Leeds or Marsh fan. Spurs do happen to win 4-3. I think maybe the headline, I guess, for Leeds was Nato did start, but he got hooked at halftime. Everyone was about the same, and for Spurs, you got Richarlison back, and Kulishevsky was back in the 11, and you really, really saw how much they've missed him. You saw it a little bit
Yeah.
versus Liverpool. He was very, very good in this game. And so we'll kind of get started there. I mean, what were your first thoughts, Reds?
Yeah, this was a wild game. Really hoping Leeds could pull it out, but it kind of falls into the same talk that we had last week about Leeds, where we know their defense isn't that good, but they're kind of like I think they're still kind of like that Blackpool team in the Premier League. They got relegated where they score a ton, but they concede so much as well.
Hmm.
And part of it's due to we look at the back four and we don't really think that's a solid group of players.
Hmm.
So maybe there's not too much Marsh can do with players, but they have to start having better defense if they want to sustain if they want to be in the Premier League still because they scored a lot. They scored 22, which is second highest in the bottom 10, but they've conceded 26, which is tied for fourth most in the EPL. So like it is kind of falling into that Blackpool mode where games are really entertaining and they score a bunch, but they're not winning and they're not getting points. They might entertain, but that's not what you want to do. Ultimately, you want to win, and it doesn't really matter if they entertain. But not a lot Marsh can do in terms of the players, the personnel on defense. So maybe he has to change the system a little bit. I mean, you have two good holding mids though, in Adams and Raka, but they're scoring at will. It seems like now they just got to figure out the defense, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be a little bit better, because right now the amount of goals they're conceding, it's not sustainable for them, and I don't think they'll be in the Premier League if they can't get a little bit better defensively at least without losing this offense that they're creating.
I mean, it's annoying, at least from a Liverpool perspective, because they were able to hold Liverpool to one goal. But Meslier made nine saves that game.
Mhm.
And I think you're kind of just seeing that every single game week. Teams are able to get a lot of shots off at them. Something we talked about last week that was a bit of a theme was um, Somerville and it might have been Harrison weren't really tracking runners on defense. At least from the wide position, and the fullbacks are getting kind of overrun. You saw that a little bit in this game, but you also saw the holding midfielders. Tyler Adams did not have a good game, unfortunately, in this game,
Mhm.
and neither did
Yeah.
Ruka. Spurs were able to get their first goal from a corner kick. Now, I don't understand why you have Tyler Adams marking Harry Kane. Now there is a foul in this goal. It was the first thing that Marsh wanted to say, and I think he's right. There is a foul, but it's the goals that they concede after this that I think is the issue, which are the ones I want to focus on because the Ben Davies one, it just comes from a throw in, and no one tracks Kulishevsky's run. He's just able to escape past Liam Cooper, and then after the first shot is blocked, Ben Davies smashes it in. Again, Ben Davies is completely wide open, and you saw this for a couple of the Betancourt goals as well. Um, you know, Leeds were able to, even when Spurs were responding, Leeds were able to get a goal back. So what's got to be annoying from their perspective is they kept taking a lead and kept conceding. Rodrigo was able to, it seemed like maybe it was a foul maybe by Tyler Adams, but it wasn't called, and Rodrigo was able to make a run and finish, and you make it 3-2 at the 76th minute mark. You figure maybe at the worst, maybe you can see it and it's going to be a draw, but there's a simple ball switched on the right side of the field by Doherty. It just sends in a hopeful cross that, again, it goes to no one, but Betancourt is right there to get the rebound. And this is another one of those situations where Tyler Adams just doesn't recognize Berhalter is wide open right there. Everyone's ball watching. Everyone's waiting for when the cross comes in. Where's the ball going? And
Mhm.
basically, the final goal was pretty dire too, because uh, again, Sanchez gets the ball from Dyer on the right side on the touchline, and he's able to ahead of him is Doughty. So it's a problem because Somerville is caught having to mark both Dyer and Sanchez on that side, and he's not able to do it. Sanchez then finds Kane, who quickly plays a through ball to Kulishevsky, who again is able to run past Leon Cooper. No one's following Kulishevsky's run. And then he gets by Robin Cook. Robin Cook just goes to ground for no reason whatsoever, and he just squares a simple ball to Betancourt. And again, it's one of those things where Luke Ayling is running towards goal. He's not picking up Betancourt. You could have been able to maybe stop this because Kulishevsky is actually in a pretty bad. Uh, Melier has basically cut him off, and he's got nothing other than to square a pass or cut a ball back. So he's not going to score from there. Kulishevsky really only had one option, and it was an easy option because there was a guy that was wide open.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then the game ended with Tyler Adams getting a second yellow, but the game was killed at that point anyways. So
Yeah.
I mean, is it worth praising Spurs? To come back in a second game. I mean, Betancourt has started to be really influential in some of these comebacks. He was very good versus Bournemouth when he came on as well. But is
Yeah.
this, or should we focus on Leeds giving up 3 goals in another game and blowing Leeds left and right now?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was nice for them to be able to compete, but yeah, they got to hold on to the lead. But I am impressed with Spurs. They're very resilient, and with 3 points here, they've now rescued 13 points from losing positions
Mhm.
in the Premier League this season. So they are resilient, and no lead is safe against them for sure. But yeah, like you mentioned, the Adams and Rocca were kind of overrun, and the fact that Adams picked up 2 yellows and Roca picked up a yellow kind of speaks to that fact too, because they were having to foul people because they're getting overrun. Pick up tactical fouls. And you mentioned Nanto. He's had some good games, but he wasn't tracking back either. He got the hook because of it, I think. But yeah, I mean, Somerville's been good. He's a young player. I'd like to highlight him real quick just because it's 4 straight games with a goal now.
Good call.
So that's huge for him, huge for his confidence. He's very young. And he has 2 game winners out of the 4. So there's a lot of things to look forward to going forward with Leeds. But I mean, like I said, I just don't have any confidence with Stroik, Cooper, Koch, or Neeson. I don't have any confidence in that back four, and there's no one on the bench that can really, in my mind, improve that defense. So if you're going to if you're going to want to improve the defense, they're going to have to buy, I think, in the January window,
I think so too,
because
because
the, it's it's a big weak it's a big weakness. It's a glaring weakness,
because
especially when you're scoring 3 against Spurs. You just
they have
expect to win.
Junior Firpo, and anytime he's played, he's not been good at following guys, and he's been caught ball watching. Maybe Stuart Dallas can come in when he finally gets healthy. And
Yeah, that's a good
he's not
shout.
really a fullback, but he can do a job there. I
Yeah,
remember he was influential in those Beasley teams.
he
But
was.
but you're right.
Yeah,
Other than that, I mean, Luke Ayling came on in the second half,
Darling.
and he was responsible for the last goal. Maybe
Yeah.
I think Leeds conceded 2 goals after he came on, and so that's not great. Luke Ayling, I think, was even playing at center back when he came on. He used to be kind of their fullback. Um,
Mhm. Ugh,
it,
yeah.
it is troubling. When they get the lead, why not go to a defensive position? That's what I don't understand. I mean, they're still
Yeah.
in a 4-2-3-1. 4-2-3-1 is when you're supposed to you're in the final third a lot, and you're the dominant team with the ball. That's
Mhm.
when you use a 10. When you're kind of when a team's kind of got you on your backs and you need to defend a little bit more, you maybe need another man in midfield. You maybe need another like a bigger body. I like Aronson, but Aronson's like 5'8". He's not going to win
Mhm.
a duel versus Betancourt or Basuma. So
Yeah, and that's a good point because when you are, when you're in the Premier League and you're not like a top 10 team, you have to be comfortable sitting back and being pragmatic and defending 1 goal leads and not always constantly going ahead and attacking even if you are up. So yeah, that's a really good point, Ben.
I mean,
Definitely need to be more pragmatic about things,
I mean, we're gonna
especially
get we're
with a
gonna get
lead.
to the Aston Villa game, and it was Villa only had a 2-1 lead, and what Emery did is he played a 6-3-1 formation. He played a back six essentially, and it worked.
Yeah,
It was hard to get stuff done. I mean, sometimes ugly works.
yeah. You have to sacrifice goals to for wins, or even just a point. Like, the 3 goals is entertaining, but a 0-0 tie gets you 1 point, and the 4-3 loss doesn't get you anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point by you, Ben.
And I mean, it is annoying too because this was a chance to have some real momentum, especially if you've been able to hold on. But just drawing Spurs, because it was at Spurs, I think. And instead, I think more people are going to be they have 4 weeks to kind of think about what Marsh is doing. Is he the guy that they should continue with? Yeah, that's unfortunate. Um,
Yeah, I mean they're sitting in 15th, and they have a game in hand against like the bottom 4 or 5 teams at least, but they're dangerously close in points to the relegation zone. They gotta have a good second half to stay in the Premier League. But it's all there for them. I think if they can kind of figure out their defense, they've got a lot of attacking options. They're gonna score goals.
and I mean, just well, I guess we'll just kind of leave it at that. Just again, we mention it every week. We want Marsh to succeed, but
Yes.
the way things are going, I personally didn't like him immediately starting with the goal they conceded on the corner kick. He
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, there's a foul on Melier. The first goal shouldn't have counted." I mean, he's right. I do think it's a foul, but again, I'm more concerned about you allowing someone to just get by you on a throw-in, or
Mhm.
just a couple of these goals were just putaways, or just guys being wide open in the box on maybe a deflected shot or a rebound, where that just should not happen. So, oh well.
Mm. Yeah, speaks to their defense too.
We'll move on to Liverpool and Southampton. This one ends 3-1. So happy times for me. Um, and frankly, it was kind of one of those things where I was a little bit like you. I didn't know if this was going to be a banana spill, peel, game, banana skin peel game. Anyways,
That works.
or not. Now it was an Anfield, but frankly, the lineup news in the beginning had me freaking out even more because there was no Kanate, um, quote unquote illness, and so it was Trent Gomez on that side, and frankly, it looks like they went back to a 4-3-3, which was interesting. The headline news was Darwin Núñez getting 2 goals and really, frankly, kind of announcing himself. Now he's been scoring a little bit here and there, but to get a brace, frankly, I don't think Liverpool would have gotten something in this game without him. His runs were very influential, but just also, it was the first time where it seems Klopp's been trying to do different formations to kind of fit Nunes in to try to play him with Firmino. They went back to a 4-3-3, and because Nunes was able to play on the wing, but also play in the middle, worked. But another thing too is because Robinson was able to play so high up as well. Robinson was basically the winger in this game, and he was able to cross the ball into Nunes, and I think that helped out as well. So we'll kind of get started here, Rex. What were your first takeaways?
Yeah, it was a vintage display from Robertson. He was just playing amazing, and the setup was pretty good. I thought by Klopp because he has been kind of playing that midfield diamond, but when Firmino dropped back into the hole, you still kind of had that diamond there.
Hmm.
And you're going to mention it more, but Firmino dropping back and deep just opens up a lot of space for Nunez to run into, and it's really good to see Nunez score brace right before the World Cup too, because you would think he's going to have a big role for his national team too. And this
Yes.
will just provide more confidence. And it's another example too, Firmino missing out on the Brazil squad, and he pops up with a goal in a good game to kind of show Brazil possibly what they're missing out on. So yeah, it was good, but there were still some concerns. I think you would probably agree. Gomez and Alexander Arnold not the best game together on that side.
Yeah.
But Van Dyke was huge though. He kind of picked up the slack there. But yeah. I mean, it was a good win, and it kind of seems like stabil. It's a stabilizing win, I guess, for
Yeah.
for Liverpool.
I mean, it started off very early. I think Cassetta Carr fouls Salah like 40 yards away from the goal. No reason to do that. There's a free kick kind of sent in by Robertson that Firmino just does a flick. basically like almost outside the box, and it travels pretty far. I think Bazzuno is just surprised that it's actually going in the corner. He's just late to react. And then
Yeah.
just very shortly after that, it's very fitting because I've actually rode this guy off a couple of weeks in a row. Che Adams comes back and responds in a very similar fashion. Liverpool just give away a stupid free kick. It's a good ball sent in by James Ward-Prowse. Don't give him a chance to send in a ball
Yeah.
when he's got all the time in the world because he's very good at whipping something in. He sends in a great
Mhm.
ball, and Che Adams is first to respond to it. But I do want to touch on the two Nunez goals because both of them did really get me excited. Now he first receives the ball and plays a very long diagonal to Firmino on the right side. So you're seeing him getting better when it comes to decision making. You're seeing him having a good touch, having a play in the build up. But Liverpool were able to kind of play the ball in the box a little bit. They tried a couple crosses. It was blocked, but they kept winning the ball back. And then eventually the ball got to Harvey Elliott, and he floats a perfect ball over, I think, Bella Kotchap that Nunes is able to quickly run onto and get a side foot to. I think it's important he hits it first time
Mhm.
because Bella Kotchap isn't very far away. If he tries to take a touch, I think the chance is lost. So he showed confidence there. You saw Nunes actually using both feet in this game. I think that was pretty exciting. But another thing too is, Harvey Elliott was very good in this game. He's starting to kind of mature a little bit more now. He's also getting looks a little bit more. I think one of the reasons why you've maybe seen a different Liverpool the last couple of weeks. One, Thiago's been healthy, but two, you haven't seen Henderson featured as much, and you've seen Elliott featured more. And I think you're maybe starting to see a little bit more of that. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, just before this, Nunez was on the wing and was able to make a very good run upfield and squared the ball to Salah that forced a pretty good save. So that's what I mentioned. His overall play has improved, just in this short window. He's not just scoring goals though he is, but to me he's gotten a better first touch and he's gotten better with his decision making, better with his passing. So I think that excites me beyond belief because I was a little
Mhm.
worried about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
There were a couple times when he was played. Klopp was doing a 4-3-3 and he was playing him in the middle, and it seemed he wasn't really a person that was able to kind of handle that. It seemed another thing too is I remember this game versus Crystal Palace. They were trying to feed him the ball a bit like we saw with Man City and Holland. They were just trying crossing, like no matter they just aimless crossing.
Yeah.
Where in this case they're starting to find him with balls kind of meant for him because he's open, and his runs are great. That is something that they've been missing, and without Luis Diaz, I don't know who else they could turn to. So it's very good he's able to play both in the wing and in the middle.
Yeah.
Uh,
Flexibility. That flexibility is huge.
but I mean, the third goal was you kind of mentioned it too. This was vintage Liverpool. Firmino drops deep, like you said. Thiago is able to find him. He gets the ball to Robinson, and then Robinson squares the ball to Nunez. Nunez makes a great run that he just again he just blows by people. He's sneaky quick, and what's kind of I guess that's all the good stuff that happened. And at least from my perspective, after Nathan Jones made some changes, Allison was forced to make a couple big saves. He made a couple big one v one save on Elianusi because again, Trenton, you mentioned it. Trenton Gomez were not marking him. Um, Samuel Aduse came on and made a nice little 1-2 with Adams. He was in on goal and again forced a very good save by Allison. So
Oh
two
yeah.
two back to back, and then Maitland Niles had a really good cross to Jay Adams that Jay Adams was able to split between Virgil and Gomez and beat Gomez in the air. And again, it forced a very good hand save by Allison. So
Yeah.
this game could have been, it was up for grabs in that second half. I mean, Southampton with 9 shots and 5 on target, but really forced four saves from Allison in that second half. And I was reeling a little bit. I was worried if they were going to get one, they were going to get the second one.
Yeah. Yeah, those two saves on Adozie and Che Adams were huge saves for Allison because if even one of those goes in, yeah, like who knows what happens? It changes the game completely. But Nathan Jones on his debut after Hasenhüttl got fired, wasn't terrible. I thought he made some good changes.
I did think he made some good
And
changes.
yeah, and they responded well. They gave up the early goal and were able to come back and tie it up. So that was a good response. And it's just hard because I was reading too. Jones only had one day of training
Right.
before this game,
hmm
so really not a lot you can really do. in one day with a completely different coach. So kind of curious why they would fire Hassan Hurdle at that time and only give Jones a day. It's kind of weird. And I do wonder if they had Hassan Hurdle, how they would have played, what the score would have been like. But yeah, I mean, I think Jones will be fine. I think he made some good decisions with the subs, and unlucky not to score a couple more goals, maybe. So I don't know. I don't think there'll be too big of a drop off there, but I'll be questioning whether or not they should have kept Hassan Hurdle for a while, unless Southampton goes on like a tear.
Right. I mean, it's rough for him. I mean, obviously he wants to be a Premier League manager, and he did a fantastic job at Luton Town. But there's a lot of pressure on him to come in, and because Southampton are, I think they are in the bottom. They may be like 19th, 18th or 19th in the spot, and it's a really quick Christmas window. So if you have a bad run of form, then the job's only going to get harder, and it's just weird they didn't go for someone more seasoned. Um,
Hmm.
I think what's interesting though is, Hassan Hoodle, for maybe his fault. He wasn't playing someone like Samuel Uduzzi. He wasn't giving him game time. He came on
Yeah,
and he was a real difference maker. Another
he
thing
was.
too is Nathan Jones switched from he basically tried a back five, and Liverpool were able to just kind of cut through it. So he ended up taking off a defender. I think he took off set the car to switch to a 4-4-2. Um, and Liverpool were reeling in that second half. Another thing I was worried about too is around like the 65th minute mark, Klopp brought on James Milner
Hmm.
again, and again I was just thinking if Southampton could get one, it's going to look bad. But to be fair to Milner, he actually did look good when he came on. And one thing to maybe say is he's now it was his 600th appearance, and he's now only three people have played more games than him. So that's it's quite a milestone. So I don't know if maybe Klopp was playing him to get to that mark, and then maybe this will stop. I don't want to see him after 2023. We'll see because people are wondering why are Liverpool able to beat like Man City? Why are they able to get some of these good results in that first month and a half of the season? Henderson and Milner, maybe even both, were playing in midfield every single game.
Hmm.
And Milner, in some of these cases, Milner was even played at right back when Trent wasn't able to go. So that's really the
Yeah.
reason you're seeing better players played instead.
Hmm.
Because the last thing we mentioned it before, the whole system relies on legs, and those two guys don't have legs anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's maybe about it. Um, you know, it, one last thought to say, at least for Robinson, is I think he's reminding everyone how amazing he is again because he's able to just completely dominate that side, and it's crazy because Trent tries to play the same way. And other than like maybe a season or two ago, I don't ever really recall that left side being vulnerable. Now you got Van Dyke on that side as well, but
Yeah.
it is just amazing how he's able to just control and bomb on that left side, send in good crosses, be a threat defensively. He's an amazing presser. He's good at turning the ball over as well. And that side is never really vulnerable. It is remarkable, and thankful he's on Liverpool.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's pretty much it. I mean, do you have anything else to say on Southampton?
Man, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's going to be a tough second half for sure because they're 19th. But I mean, if they can get Che Adams scoring consistently, he was one a couple years ago we thought would be a pretty good goal scorer for them, and he necessarily hasn't. He hasn't done poorly necessarily, but maybe a little bit can be done to get him scoring more. But who knows? And then they got a couple good like Lavia was probably their best player.
Lavia was very good. Good call.
Yeah, and he's been hurt for a while, so maybe getting him back in the second half of the season will help. And Nadozi playing him more because, like you said, Hassan Hurl didn't really give him game minutes, and he looked pretty good here. So I would expect to see him more too. So yeah, there's Belakacev's on Germany too. So like Salisu is on Ghana, so they have some like talented players that are on national teams. That they can kind of like build around, I think. But
They might get
I don't know, man.
they might get Livermento in January too. We kind of
Oh,
forget
they
about
could
him.
use him. Yeah, they could use him for sure.
He
Um,
had an ACL
whew.
sometime in like February, so I don't know what the timeline
Mm.
is, but
And he was
December
playing so well for
December
them
or January.
too.
Hmm.
Okay, so that could help. Yeah, I mean, It's all there. It's kind of compacted down at the bottom. Like a win can kind of take you out
I think so.
of the relegation zone. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting second half. But I think if they get relegated, you could probably point to them letting go of Hasenhüttl as maybe what got them relegated, or if they make it and they stay up, you could play devil's advocate and be like getting rid of Hasenhüttl is why you stayed up in the Premier League.
I do think
So it's
they've
gonna be interesting.
I do think they've opened themselves to that though. That's a really good call because maybe they could have waited at least after the December window, or maybe they just didn't trust it. But if Jones doesn't have a good December and January window, because there's so many games left and right, back and forth, um, that's all anyone's going to talk about. Why didn't you wait and things like that. So we'll see. I mean, I didn't necessarily see. Um, that I mean, well, he went with a different formation. I didn't really see them pressing as much as maybe they did. Another thing too is one of the reasons why Robinson was able to place so high up, and this was actually a problem for them. Um, Virgil van Dijk and Gomez were basically just they were squatting on the 50-yard line in some of these respects. Southampton were basically allowing Liverpool to play where they were, and that was an issue because that ended up hurting them. They weren't. You could have maybe tried to push them back a little bit. So, anyways,
Yeah.
we'll
No,
move
I
on.
agree.
We'll move on to Everton and Bournemouth. Now, one team in Liverpool had a good weekend. Another team didn't. This one ends 3-0 to Bournemouth. And one of the interesting things to say about the Bournemouth starting 11 is Gary O'Neill. It might be his last game. He did switch things up a little bit. He moved Adam Smith to the other side of the field. He did the same thing with Tavernier and Billing, kind of flipped them over. And Jack Stevens returned, and because of Chris Metham was suspended. There was no Ryan Fredericks, but another thing too is we saw what's his face? No, maybe it wasn't this game. It was someone else. That was because Sensei. Zamora
Oh yeah, Samara
made a start. Um,
left back.
so I mean, the first goal comes from Tavernier. So it's kind of funny how you even switched him over, and he's still scoring. He's had a very good last couple of weeks. It's just a nothing shot from Solanke, but Pickford spills it, and I think this was kind of maybe a theme here. Pickford didn't necessarily have his best game, and I think the last couple of weeks, Everton's defense has been really vulnerable, and Pickford's been able to save them. In this game, he wasn't. Um, and Tavernier was able to kind of finish because he's quick to react. He's able to just run past him, Mikolenko, because he's not expecting Pickford to spill it. And then Kiefer Moore was able to add a second one. And if there's maybe kind of controversy, now we mentioned how Marsh had some comments. He thought that a goal shouldn't have counted. I think Lampard has a legit case here too, because Kiefer Moore scores after I think it was like a corner kick that they was able to kind of recycle. The ball's maybe going out, and Billing's able to save it, and Billing fires a shot that Pickford has to like parry, and then I forget who it might be Tavernier who like heads it towards goal, and then Kiefer Moore heads it in. But during all of this, Tarkowski's on the ground because he went to try to head the ball, and it might have been Kiefer Moore as well who hit him first, and so Tarkowski's on the ground the entire time during all this happening, and it's a head injury, and the referee just allows everything to unfold. So that was just kind of weird.
Yeah, because usually they're supposed to stop it if it's a head injury immediately.
I think
So
so too. Yeah.
yeah, if it's not a head injury, then yeah, the ref can just say, "Oh, we're gonna play on." But yeah, head injury, they stop it. So yeah, I think that's smart. I didn't really pick up on that watching it, but yeah, that's a good call. He probably should have just blown it dead immediately.
And then, unlike the last couple of weeks where they've had that dreaded 2-0 lead, Jaden Anthony was able to get the third and basically win the game. And Jaden Anthony scored in the mid cup game. So good to see him. Kiefer Moore just I think he came on for Kiefer Moore. And basically drew a foul in one of his first actions, and really good ball was looped in, but by Cook. Cook had a chance to do this for Leeds last week. Had a very bad ball, but this one it was good delivery, and Anthony was able to head it in kind of close range. No one's really marking him, so it's a free header. He heads it basically at Pickford, but it's so close. Pickford can't. I can't blame Pickford for that. But just Everton were a mess. You can blame them being upset for that Kiefer Moore goal, but everything else, it was kind of their own doing in some respects. So we'll kind of get started here,
Yeah.
Rex. What were your first takeaways?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of I guess I'm kind of sad to see Gary O'Neill go because
Mhm.
the last 3 games he kind of got Bournemouth up and firing. I was just looking at like the last 3 games. We talked up Tavernier a lot. The last 3 games he's had 2 goals, 4 assists, and even Kiefer Moore has 4 goals in the last 3 games. And he's kind of someone that I mean, honestly, he's just a big aerial presence. So for him to have 4 goals in the last 3 games is pretty impressive. That's quite a hot streak for both of them. And then Tavernier too, just his versatility. He's played left wing, left mid, attacking mid, right wing, right mid, right back, and second striker all this year so far, and half the year. Some of the like left wing and left mid, not a lot of difference in those roles, but still he's played all over. So I was excited to kind of see Gary O'Neill actually get the goals flowing from some of these guys. Billing has been playing well under Gary O'Neill too. Only the one win, and it's a big one though. Three over Everton is one of your like relegation uh, contenders there in Everton. So it was a big win. But yeah, I mean, I think he kind of just a caretaker manager role, perhaps best suited for that, and they get someone in that they really are excited about. But yeah, it was good to see them scoring and free scoring because we're worried about that because they don't have a good defense, so they're gonna have to score.
Well, I hope they keep him on. To be honest, now
I
Beasley
hope
might
so
might
too.
want his own team.
Yeah,
Which would make sense, but at least from this perspective, he's certainly not done himself to any harm to maybe be on the lookout for a new job,
yeah,
because
definitely.
it's very interesting. You mentioned all those names and you mentioned those results. This is the exact same team that Scott Parker was basically after he was fired, basically said this team's not good enough.
Yeah.
I can't work. I can't turn water to wine. Essentially, and it was after that Liverpool game, after they were blown out. Um, but it's just that is the kind of turnaround has been amazing. I think everyone assumed they were going to get relegated, and I think he's got them at what 13th or 12th. Um,
14th, yeah,
yeah,
and they're only they're 3 points away from being in the top half, the top 10 of the table. So yeah, I mean, it was a huge win, and I know like O'Neal lost a couple games too, but at least they're more competitive and they're scoring. And then this is a big win against Everton because their positions could have flopped, and Everton now are in 17th, only 1 point above the relegation zone, and that could have easily been Bournemouth. So
hmm
it was a really big, like decisive victory, and it's a good one for O'Neal if it is his last game. It's a good one for him to bow out on, on a high note. But I agree. I hope he at least stays in charge, or maybe we'll see him get a job somewhere else, maybe the championship or something like that. Because he did a good job with Bournemouth.
and
It's tough to get them to score with those players that they have.
even in those games they lost, a number of them were with 2 goal leads. So
Yeah.
you're competitive in almost every game. Another thing that's worth saying too is maybe they just like playing Everton. Um, because they I think it's like 7-1 aggregate over the last 2 games because they beat Everton for 4-1 in the cup game. And that was a pretty strong Everton team. Where
Yeah. Yeah.
Bournemouth kind of played maybe a second team. And what's kind of funny is they had a two goal lead in that game as well. And Everton were able to get a goal back by Demarai Gray in the second half. You worried, oh, here we go again. Are we going to blow another 2 goal lead? And instead, the exact opposite happened. And one thing that's kind of funny is I saw former Brentford player Emmanuel Marcones scored. So
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
someone
yeah.
that's someone we haven't really seen, at least in the league. But another guy I saw was they have a tricky, speedy wide player with very quick feet, and Sariki Dembele, which we haven't seen yet. So I'm curious if maybe we'll kind of see him in the cards, or maybe he'll just be kind of a cup club or cup game player.
Mhm.
But he looked pretty good. He was getting past Nathan Patterson for fun, and Patterson's got pretty good pace to him.
Mhm. Yeah, there's some things to look forward to. I think for this team, if they get Bielsa, who knows what'll happen. But he does have, it seems like now he has more attacking talent. Because Gary O'Neill kind of unlocked it. So yeah, like if they keep him on the staff, I think that would help too. But at least there's kind of like a perhaps a framework of how to get those guys scoring. And everything's very close. 3 points in there in the top 10 would be incredible for Bournemouth, newly promoted team. And Everton, it's 8 Premier League games in a row that they have not won against a newly promoted team. They
Mhm.
got 3 draws and 5 losses. So yeah, there's something there with Everton too against these teams that they should be winning against. And if you don't want to get dragged into the relegation zone, you got to beat the teams that are below you or near you. And they were kind of heating up a little bit, and now they're kind of leveled out. So maybe it's another team where the World Cup coming is possibly good because it was 3 in a row without a win after after Lampard kind of like righted the ship. So maybe it's a good chance for them to kind of regroup as well during the World Cup.
Yeah, this is definitely a club that is excited for this break to happen. Because ever since that, uh, I forget who they it might have. I don't think it was Bournemouth. Anyways, ever since they had a decent win over someone, they played Man United, they played Newcastle and Spurs all in basically in a row, lost. Which you kind of imagine that's going to happen. But then I think they beat Crystal Palace, and then I think they drew Leeds, and then basically it was just they lost to Leicester, and now they've lost here. I think they've only got one win for the last 7 games, which
Yeah, and
is
they
that is
lost to
not good.
Bournemouth
Not good for him.
in the FA Cup too. I mean, Bournemouth beat Everton, yeah, 4-1
Yeah,
in the FA Cup. So it was twice in a row that they lost to Bournemouth.
and they really were not competitive in this game. I mean, Bournemouth had
No, yeah,
16
not at
shots,
all.
9 on target. Everton only had 3 on target. And it's kind of funny. You mentioned Beasley maybe coming in. I think of someone like Kiefer Moore. I don't think that's going to work at all. So you kind of worry a little bit about him. But speaking of Kiefer Moore, you know, from a U.S. perspective, I kind of put this on the script. It's annoying that Kiefer Moore, Dan James, and Gareth Bale basically scored in their finding leading up to this Fort Wales, um, and you just kind of look at what maybe Wales will run with. Brennan Johnson's been starting to play a little bit for Forrest again.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is a little worry. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we touched on that a little bit. It is weird to me that they're linked to someone like Beasley. Again, I get the cachet, but you think about what he's known for, it's not really what Bournemouth need. I think Bournemouth
Mm.
needs someone that Bournemouth are getting these 2 goal leads and letting it slip away. I think they need someone that would be better defensively. And Beasley is known more for like pressing energy, taking the game to people, being great on the eye and fun, adventurous.
Mhm.
I don't. Will that work at a small town club like this with the roster the way it's built? I don't know. But again, maybe it would.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard to tell. Who knows?
Mhm. And so, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. I mean, if Everton do not bounce back well at Christmas, it's possible New Year's Day Lampard might be out of job.
Yeah.
That might be
Yeah.
something to say.
Yeah, they're dangerously close to that relegation spot. So yeah, anything could happen.
And so we'll move on to Man United and Fulham. This one ends 2-1 to Man United, and I think you kind of put it in the script. Uh, Fulham are going to be glad they don't have to play Manchester clubs for a long time because both of these losing at the very end, in the last couple minutes, in both games. At least in this perspective, I actually thought Fulham actually did take the game to Man United, even though Man United went very, very dominant in that first half. Um, one of the but there was lineup news. No Ronaldo, quote unquote illness. We'll get to him. But Malacia started at right back, which was interesting because Dallo was suspended. Then it was Lindelof, Lisandro, Luke Shaw, Casemiro, Eriksson, which you expect, but Elanga got a start. And then Bruno is back after being suspended, and then Rashford and Martial. Um, and frankly, United were very good in that first half. Just kind of the issue was, after getting that first goal by Eriksson, they weren't able to kind of add on to that, even though they were getting
Mhm.
chances. Fulham, on the other hand, at least from an American's perspective, it was I did not like what I saw from Tim Ream.
Mhm.
But now again, it could have just been a one-off. But Man United players were getting behind him for fun, and it just seemed he was vulnerable for that. Now, still no Mitrovic too, and yeah, I think maybe kind of the theme to get onto is the Fulham in the first half was not the same Fulham we saw in the second half, and I think one of the main reasons was um, Silva took off Harry Wilson for Dan James, and he immediately made them better.
Yeah, immediately. And his pace, just watching how fast he was, his pace basically created the goal too. But it's going to be worrisome playing against him as a U. From a U.S. perspective because I mean, he's just got so much pace. I guess you could say, I guess Robinson in training goes against Dan James because Robinson's the left back and Dan James is
You'd
the
probably
right
be,
winger.
yeah, you'd probably be on the same
So
side.
maybe he's used to that, but I mean that speed is worrisome because I mean, obviously he's going to get by our center backs no matter who they are. So Robinson's going to have he's going to have a game against Wales too. And then I mean Kiefer Moore too. We're getting too much in the USA, but yeah, it's just another worrisome player that and a different type of player, just a speed player. That it's going to be tough for us
Well,
to go against them.
I imagine, so we're gonna. Well, I guess we'll get into the USA game a little bit. I imagine we're gonna do a 4-3-3, and it'll be kind of it'll basically be what we've kind of seen, where Robinson and maybe Dest or Scaly will be the right backs and be asked, or be the fullbacks and be asked to actually play pretty high and play in the attack. Because Pulisic isn't going to be that wide player. He's going to want to play in the half space. And if you imagine if Gio plays, he's going to be the same thing. You're going to need width to come from somewhere. You're going to need someone to make an overlap run. And so you think of how Wales are going to play. They're probably going to play five in the back and play with wing backs and try to look to counter. And you think of the speed, someone like Dan James, that does scare me a lot, because if
Mm.
um, Anthony Robinson is caught out of position, it's going to be him versus Team Rim, and I
Yeah,
don't,
and
I
that's
don't, I don't like that our situation in that spot. Um,
no.
yeah,
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, I guess you gotta have to just, I mean, maybe Robinson's gonna have to kind of pick and choose when he goes up, and he's gonna maybe have to stay back more against them. But it does open up some things too, potentially, like maybe he James can be caught up field, and we can capitalize on a long ball past him or something like that. But yeah, man, just more concerns. Especially, like you said, Reem, maybe not the best game, and then Dan James just shows not only how fast he is, but I mean that finish was amazing too.
hmm yeah, it's kind of funny too. I had a cheeky thing on Twitter where I said, it would just be so funny if Andres Pereira would star and basically score versus the club that basically said he's not good enough, and that basically happened, but it wasn't with Pereira, it was with Dan James. Because
Yeah,
Man United were like,
true.
you're not good enough.
You're
And
not good enough.
what's funny is they've had issues on that right side. The last couple of weeks. Now, I don't necessarily want to say they should have kept on to Dan James,
Right,
but
right.
they've tried Sancho there. It doesn't really work. Anytime Rashford's played on that right side, he hasn't really worked out.
Yeah.
They
They tried
they
Alonga
they
in this
brought
one.
in they brought in Anthony, but Anthony's been hurt the last couple of weeks. So,
Hmm.
um, but well, we're kind of beating around the bush. We do need to touch on basically the headline, the star man. The reason why this didn't end 1-1 is Fulham made the sub to bring on Dan James, and after that, Fulham basically took control of the game. And then Ten Hag ended up bringing on this youngster Alejandro Garnacho, who we've talked about a little bit, in the last couple of weeks. Um, and frankly, the second he came on, within 30 seconds, I think his first touch was to, he got the ball and immediately tried taking a defender on, did a couple step overs, and almost drew a PK. So he immediately was not at all scared to get involved. And frankly, the game completely changed once he came on. He was so direct. He offered them a wide threat. Sometimes you've seen guys that play on the wing side. Rashford's kind of done this where he seems kind of hesitant. He seems to kind of like wait, and it seemed the opposite was happening. He was forcing the defender to react, and basically Man United score and end up winning the game because he does a 1-2 with Ericsson, and Ericsson plays a ball that I thought when you watch it in replay, it looks like a really horrible pass by Ericsson. Because another thing to say is this is basically the last touch of the game. If Ericsson plays a ball and it just goes out of bounds, or a defender is able to run onto it, it's probably the end of the game. And he plays it so far ahead, but Garnacho is able to just sprint past everyone. He goes by Bobby Reed like he's not even there, just showing
Hmm.
a complete second gear. Like Sonic like. And it's a great finish for the youngster.
Yeah, amazing finish.
And so we'll stick with United. I mean, and we'll touch with Ronaldo later. But let's talk about this youngster because he scored the winner, or he scored versus Sociedad. So it's not his first goal. And he's won our buddy Alex over. He said he should have made the Argentina's roster. But he does look a real player going forward.
Yeah, yeah, I think so, and I think it might be one of those examples where playing in the Europa League. really helps these younger guys because maybe he doesn't play that much. In if they're not in Europa, he doesn't play that much, and maybe he doesn't come off the bench and score here. So it's kind of it's nice to be able to have like those competitions where you can kind of play these younger guys that might be stars, and you can kind of get a sense of what they can do. And clearly, Ten Hag, got a sense of what he could do from the Sociedad game, and brought him on in a big spot. He brought him on in a spot where they're tied and they need a spark, and he provided it. I think it's great. It's a good option to have. If he doesn't start, great option to have on the bench. And I think Ten Hag's doing a good job. I think he's kind of getting this team, to where he wants them to be. There are sometimes there's some inconsistencies, and they need Varane back too. But I think slowly he's getting them where they want to be. And he just took over, and he's only had one transfer window with them, and they're in fifth place right now, only 3 points back of fourth. So they're in a in a good spot, and I think Ten Hag's done a good job, and he's done a good job kind of managing some of these egos. And I know it might mean Ronaldo leaves, but they're playing better without Ronaldo right now.
Yeah.
And maybe he's not a good locker room guy either. So maybe that needs to happen. But in general, I think Ten Hag's doing a great job. I think he's going to be a good coach, and he's getting the team where he wants them to be. And who knows what he's going to do in the transfer window, but he brings in more of his the players that he wants. I think this is going to possibly be a perennial top four for the next couple of years, potentially under Ten Hag.
I mean, it is interesting too because I've seen this in like 3 or 4 games now, where he'll make changes in the second half to basically bring on a third midfielder. So it'll either be Fred or McTominay. And what he does is he plays Bruno, he switches Bruno from being a 10 to basically playing out wide as kind of like that right winger. Bruno even started right wing in one, and I think the Sociedad game. And what's kind of interesting is I don't really think Bruno really fits there. So I don't really know what necessarily the plan is for Bruno. But the Man United do seem a lot better with Martial in than necessarily Ronaldo. Now the finishing's not there yet, but I think with a run of games, he'll get back. Um, but to touch on Garnacho, I think what's problematic here is he's got without even like only seeing him a couple of times, he's got something that Jadon Sancho doesn't. And like, there's so many guys that are like that try playing on the wing that basically one-trick ponies. I like to call. I feel like Pulisic's kind of this way too.
Mm,
Technical players that like to cut inside, basically all the time. Cut towards goal to like their stronger foot. Inverted essentially. And this guy, he can do step overs. He can make people miss. He can play out wide. He can be direct or kind of link up. He had a good pass to Ericsson before that goal. But another thing too is he's just got legit pace. He's got a second gear to him, and
yeah.
I feel like the days of these like cute, techie, false wingers might be coming to an end. You look at City. That's all Pep has. This guy has something different.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because
And
Anthony's kind of like that too, and I've heard Man U supporters voice concern over that fact that Anthony kind of just does the same thing every time.
mhm.
And if you shut that down, like, can he step up his game and provide do things that maybe make him uncomfortable?
Bec-
So yeah, that's a good point.
because when you cut inside and when you have someone that has to do that, you must have an overlapping fullback or wingback to get the defender to get off you. Otherwise, it is pretty easy you're going to get the ball on your stronger foot. But another thing that's kind of interesting too is he didn't necessarily have his best game, but Alanga started this game, and he's another 20-year-old, and frankly, he's got something similar too. Now he doesn't have the tricks and whatnot that Garnacho shed, but he's got some pace to him too. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to kind of see if Ten Hag can kind of develop him a little bit more.
yeah, definitely.
And so, unfortunately, we do got to touch a little bit on Ronaldo. Maybe we'll kind of just get your first thoughts, and then I'll say something.
Yeah, well, yeah, he goes on Piers Morgan, kind of airs his grievances. He feels disrespected. He's clearly not a fan of Ten Hag. I don't know. I mean, I don't like it. Obviously, it's just more distractions, and it just
I
to
think
me,
that
he
I think
kind of.
that's the word for it.
But for me, he just came off as a whiny superstar. I kind of feel like the sooner they get rid of him, the better. I don't. It's going to be hard getting rid of him because he hasn't played well, and he demands just that enormous salary. That's going to be the stumbling block for a lot of teams. But I think at this point, I think United are willing to take a loss on him just to get him out of there. And he kind of came off as a crybaby to me in that interview. I just hear him complaining a bunch, and honestly, he's gotten a good amount of opportunities by Ten Hag, and he hasn't performed in them.
Mhm.
Like we mentioned last week, Ten Hag even made him captain, and he didn't do anything. So I really don't think he can complain, especially when you're like refusing to come off the bench as a substitute. You're not going to play the next game after that. Like he just came off as a crybaby to me, and I think Ten Hag has done everything right here. He's kind of showed that he has like the guts to, make the big calls, not only with Ronaldo but Maguire too. And like we mentioned, it makes the team better. So yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way Ronaldo came off, and it's just causing more headaches off the pitch, which is what United don't want. They want to. Ten Hag wants to focus on the pitch. So I think the sooner they get rid of him, I think the better that team will be, at least in the locker room, if nothing else.
I think the timing of it was just insane.
Yeah.
It is very similar to what he did with the Spurs game, where your team has just gotten this great win. You imagine the locker room is going to be super hyped up. Now with the Spurs game, you had this big result, and basically it was kind of an upset in some respects. In this case, you've got everyone was talking about this youngster Garnacho, and what a superstar he could maybe be. And 3 hours later, all the headlines are about you again. I think another thing too is a distraction not only for what United are going with, but it's a distraction for Portugal with the World Cup, because you think of who's on that Portugal team. You got Dallo and Bruno. So
Hmm.
I mean, it's going to be some kind of comments said there. Now
Yeah.
what's so our buddy Alex said that he agreed with a lot of what he said. He mentioned something about the hiring of Ragnick, a sporting director to be a coach was weird. He criticized how the club's been run, behind the scenes post Fergie, and I think all of that's fine. There might even be some truth to that. But I don't think what he said matters. I think the timing of it was just insane. You do
Yeah.
this at Christmas time. Do this after the World Cup. I think what he did is and another thing too is he did this after Ten Hag made you captain. So I don't know if Ten Hag made him captain, basically telling him this is going to be the last game you play.
Mm.
And this will be just like without anyone telling you that, and maybe that's what set him off. I'm just speculating, but that
Mm.
is so weird to me.
Yeah,
Because
because he's
it was
given chances.
it was weird to make him captain after doing what he did, because
Mhm.
he was shut out versus Chelsea.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. And he can't complain about not playing because he's been given opportunities, and when he was given those opportunities, he didn't perform. So he can't really complain about that. I think Ten Hag has kind of been pretty patient with him in a sense because like if it was me, I would have given him a chance to start, and then if he didn't do anything, then I'd be like, all right, you're not going to play because not only are you not performing, but you're not good in the locker room. You're not a good teammate. And you mentioned like the rub off effect on Portugal. I'm already like seeing. I don't know. I guess it's footage of like Cancelo's mad in training yesterday for Portugal, and Ronaldo kind of came up and grabbed his head and tried to make him feel better, but Cancelo didn't look too happy with it.
I've
So
seen,
they're already like
yeah.
being scrutinized already for that for just Ronaldo being there.
At least on that instance, I saw that. I think that was taken out of context.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was just there's like a longer video where Cancelo
Yeah.
was like mad about something, and
He's mad about something not
R-
related to Ronaldo.
Ronaldo
Ronaldo's
was
just
like
trying to be a good
Ronaldo
team.
was
Yeah.
consoling him, because like
Yeah, I agree.
why would
But it's
Cancelo?
already they're
Why?
already like, all over what's going on, the media.
Because Cancelo's not
Because
going to care. Oh, true.
Ronaldo.
Yeah, Cancelo's not going to care about what's happening with United drama. I don't imagine. But you're right.
Mm.
It's just another reason for like the media to make up something about you.
Yeah.
And you're giving
And now
them
Portugal's drawn into it.
fuel for that fire. Um,
Mhm.
and we'll move on to Brighton and Aston Villa. This one ends 2-1. Frankly, one thing I'll say just immediately about this is I thought this was maybe the surprise of the weekend, just because there was no Ollie Watkins for Villa. Danny Ings basically had to lead the line by himself. I didn't really think he could do that anymore, and
Yeah.
man, was I wrong.
Y Yeah.
It was maybe his best game because he didn't just score goals. He looked quicker than I'd seen him. He was actually making runs to get in behind. He got behind Colwell with a very good run. And he was, it just looked like he had like a new set of legs. In some respects. So yeah. What were
Yeah.
your first takeaways?
Yeah, Ings and Buendia playing as the two strikers together. It really worked in this one. So I think that might be something in the future we see because it worked out really well. And they had a good base midfield back there with like Luis, Baba Kukamara, again. So they have a strong base to play two strikers. It was good, and I agree. It was unexpected, especially because 1 minute in, Brighton score,
Hmm.
and to be able to kind of like that's like the worst start imaginable for Emery for Emery's like first game in charge is to make a terrible mistake and dwell on the ball and concede in the first minute, and they're able to like brush that off, grow into the game, and come back and win. And it was a huge result, and it's something that Emery can build on like right away because this Brighton team was trending in a positive direction.
Really
The
was.
last couple
Hmm.
games
Just beat
were wins,
Arsenal.
and yeah, beat Arsenal in the cup game too. That's kind of why Colwell got that start because he played so well against Arsenal in the cup. So yeah, it's a huge win, and it's kind of a you know really big. It could be a season defining result for Villa potentially. I know it's like early, but last game before the break, they go into the break with like a good taste in their mouth, good confidence. They're not coming in after a loss. It's a nice comeback win with a new coach. So I would think to look after them because you give Emery like a month and a half to train with them and kind of get through what he wants the team to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, this could be a surprise second half of the season for Villa possibly because yeah, like you said, Ings is stepping up, and they have some bench players and some players that weren't there, like Watkins. So yeah, I would potentially look after this team. Look for this team in the second half of the season.
I agree because when you look at what they were able to do versus a Brighton midfield Brighton had been able to kind of bully teams with Casado and McAllister, and Casado had a good game, but McAllister didn't. Now, he got the one on Douglas Luiz to get the first goal, but Douglas Luiz after that was 6 of 7 for his duels, and Barbecue Kamara was 8 of 11.
Mm,
That was very you haven't seen teams being able to do that. I also think it was kind of funny how the game started off with McAllister getting one on catching Luiz with the ball, almost like fouling him, but not really. And
yeah.
basically, just 60 minutes later, the exact same happened with Douglas Luiz doing the same thing to McAllister, which led to the Danny Ings goal. Um, it wasn't really a pretty game. 7 shots for Brighton, 8 for Villa, two apiece on target. But what's kind of funny is right after Villa got that second goal, Emery just went into a shell, just completely bunkered in. And I think what you really saw was Brighton was significantly missing Matoma.
Yeah.
He's only been a starter for a couple of games, but you missed him, and you only Adam Lallana had to go off after about like 5 minutes in kind of a weird situation with his calf, and the guy they brought on just didn't have the same. He has energy in Sensio, but he's not creative. He's not clever like Lallana is, and you saw
Yeah, that's true.
Brighton just kind of struggled to feed some passes into a very boxed in line.
Yeah,
Um,
really. Too like perhaps a little fortunate. Uh, Villa a little fortunate because Dine could have potentially given up a PK
I think
in
so.
the second half
Hmm.
on a tackle on Solly March. So yeah, I mean a little bit of I guess anger from Brighton after the game because they thought that should have been a PK.
And De Zerbi was upset about that, because he
Hmm.
didn't think that the PK on Ings should have been called, even though I think that's wrong. I think or it was McGinn.
Yeah, McGinn
Lewis
got
Dunk went to ground on McGinn, which I think it was bad on Dunk's part because the way Sanchez was coming out, I don't think John McGinn takes a heavy touch. I don't think he's got the speed to get past Sanchez. But again, the heat of the
no.
heat the heat of the moment, you can't do that.
Yeah, Jeremy would say, "Stay on your feet, lad."
Stay on your feet. Well, exactly. You stay. That is what people
That's
are
why.
supposed. That is what people are supposed to do. Um, we'll move on to West Ham and Leicester. This was also a bit of a surprise result, but maybe not. We'll get into Leicester's form, but Leicester do win 2-0. And I guess one of the lineup news was Luke Thomas had to play over James Justin, who appears to have ruptured his Achilles, which really does suck for him because he's it's only a few years, or it's only maybe a year away from him missing a whole season after doing his ACL, and so two
Yeah.
two pretty serious injuries back to back. You do worry about him because he was starting to come into form a little bit, and frankly, the back line was starting to come to form a little bit. So you have to change it in a significant way here. But and another thing too is you started off this game with James Madison getting a goal, and he had to come off after about 8 minutes or so, and
Yeah, that's concerning.
but apparently
Because
he's okay, just a little tightness, but
oh
you know again it was just one of those things where this was this was one of those like uh-oh moments where like if there was a guy that like was on the cusp of just having an absolute horror Saturday, it would have been Madison.
yeah, true. Because he just got called up too for the World Cup.
Hmm.
So, whew,
And so, I mean, this game could have been worse, even because Fabianski had a save on Tielemans
yeah, PK
after
side.
it was 1-1, and then Harvey Barnes was able to get a second after a couple unknowns. Luke Thomas was able to cut off a pass going to someone out wide, and then Harvey Barnes just basically does like a 60-yard sprint after getting the ball to Perez, and Perez plays a very good three ball that Harvey Barnes just completely runs past. I think it's a guard for fun, and then it's a really good finish. But we haven't seen Perez play, and so it was one of those instances where Leicester needed a couple guys to come in. Dennis Pratt had to come in, from Madison, and a couple guys really stepped up for them.
Yeah, yeah. Leicester's been like completely different the last couple games, and we thought for a long time Rogers was going,
Thought he
was a
was
dead
left.
man
Thought he's
walking.
left for
Yeah,
dead. Hmm.
and we talked about last week, like it's one of the times where you actually stick with the manager and you get rewarded, which is refreshing to see. But I do want to highlight, like, real quick, there's four people for Leicester. I mean, the main one. I mean, Madison has just been fantastic. Two goals, 2 assists the last 4 games. And Barnes as well, 4 games, 4 goals in 5 games. But Fias at center back, since he's arrived, the last 9 games, he's got 5 wins, a draw, and 3 losses, and 6 clean sheets.
He's been such a
And
good
then
signing for them.
he's been so good. And then we kind of have been we've been down on the goalkeeper award,
Hmm.
and he's tied for second in the Golden Gloves for clean sheets. And so the first 7, he had 1 shutout and conceded 22. The last 8, he's got 5 wins. He's got 6 clean sheets, and they only conceded 3 goals. So really, I just want to give Ward a little shout out
Hmm.
because
No,
we were kind
I
of
think you're
pooping
right
on
too.
him, but he's playing well.
Uh-huh. No, I think you are right too. I mean, they you mentioned the clean sheets, and Ward's made a couple of big saves. Really, the one that they the one game they've lost in a pretty like I don't know 5-6 game stretch was just lost 1-0 to City on a freak Kevin De Bruyne goal.
Hmm.
And like
Hmm.
you're saying, you left for dead. I completely I thought there was no way he was going to survive the Spurs game, and then they lost to Bournemouth.
Yeah,
And I thought they were in trouble there. But it's you kind of mentioned how Everton have lost to a bunch of teams around them. You know, Leicester basically they lost to Bournemouth, but then they drew Palace, then they beat Leeds, Wolves, and beat Everton and West Ham now. So they're beating the teams around them, and because they've done that, I think they're like 13th or 14th now. When they were
yeah, 13th.
not that long ago, they were bottom.
They were rooted to the bottom. Yeah, they're 13th, and they're 2 points out of being ninth. So yeah, I mean, it's good to see though, because I do feel like a lot of times these clubs are quick to fire the managers. So it's nice to see them stick with one and get rewarded for sticking with Rodgers.
And frankly, you fear of that theme, with Southampton. Um, another thing you can think about. I don't know if Burnley would have gotten relegated last year if they had fired Dyche or not, because they did go in a pretty good stretch with that caretaker for a little bit. But Burnley did eventually go down. You normally don't really see that work out for you. Watford, when they're in the Premier League, they fire a manager every 3 months, and that doesn't seem to really work out for them. So I think you're right to
Yeah,
kind of touch
true.
on that.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see.
And do you have any thoughts for West Ham? I mean, is it worry times for Morris?
I think so, man. I mean, it's just maybe last year it was a little bit of we're relying on 2 players essentially to score and create with Bowen and Antonio, and now those 2 players aren't really playing that well. And we can speculate why. Maybe they were leggy, but they just haven't played that well. Scamacca was a big reason why they were doing decent, at least decent barely staying out of the relegation zone.
Mhm.
And now his goals have kind of dried up too. So there's a lot of concern with this West Ham team. We thought that they would have been better for sure. Um, but they have a lot of talent, so it could be as simple as just finding Bowen and Antonio some form again, and they're good. It could be that easy. Um, but it's not. They're not in a good position, and I think Moyes will be on the hot seat. Um, maybe the World Cup. This is another team. The World Cup coming up will help them out, I would imagine. And maybe there is a chance that they can kind of rest Antonio and Bowen and get them firing in the second half of the season. And if that happened, they'll be fine. And they still have Paqueta. He's adapting to the Premier League still. So the more games he gets, the better you would think he would play. So there's still a lot of optimism here. But they're definitely a team that's going in the wrong direction. And the World Cup will help them, you would imagine.
I mean, it's one of the things you kind of worry about a little bit is I think I saw Declan Rice has played every single minute so far of their season. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily remember him getting a lot of break last year too. And you imagine he's going to feature in every game for England.
Yeah, he probably will.
So you worry about him maybe being burnt out. Everything is every week it's kind of the same lineup. It's him and Suchek kind of in like a pivot role, with kind
Mhm.
of someone in front of them, and then just one striker. And you mentioned they were so reliant on Antonio and Bowen last year. Um, Bowen's not necessarily firing a lot for them, and they brought in
Yeah.
Skamaka, but it's a new league. It can kind of take some time. They did get 18 shots in this game. Frankly, I'm less worried about their attack and more at the back line because you lost Kurt Zuma to injury, and you brought on a guard. A guard did not look fast at all. Now this is only the first time I've seen him. Maybe he does have some pace to him, and he was just rusty. But
Mhm.
you're playing Craig Dawson almost every game now. You need to have Ogbonna back, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Because Dawson's aging too, and he's slower.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a good call. And then right off the break, Arsenal play West Ham too. So they need to figure out something during this World Cup break for sure.
And yeah, because it's three league losses in a row now. And yeah, I think they lost in the cup game as well.
Yeah, to Blackburn.
Mhm.
So and PK is not good.
And so we'll move on to our last game, Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest. Not the most exciting game, at least from a neutral, but a super exciting game for Nottingham Forest. Um, and one of the interesting things is the lineup was different. Uh, Joe Warhol, and Willie Bowley got their first starts at center back. So you didn't see Scott McKenna and Cook, and you saw Lodi
Finally.
make the 11 as well. And I
Mm.
don't know if that was necessarily the reason why, but you look at the stats. Crystal Palace had 8 shots and 0 on target. This is Forest not necessarily have been the best end the back line. They only had 30% of the ball, so Palace were definitely dominant. Palace had the most more passes, like 500 passes, but they were not able to break through that back line, and it's possible that some of that kind of played a role in it.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and like we were kind of clamoring for Newcastle for not Newcastle for Nottingham to have a better defense, and yeah, Worrell and Bali look great, and we know Lodi is a huge talent too. So to see him playing well was fun. And then their midfield I thought played pretty well too. Kuyate, Freuler, and Yates
Hmm.
were all pretty good in this game too. And then we got Johnson, who we have to worry about for Wales as well, and he hasn't necessarily gotten going like he was last year in the championship, but he's still a really good player, a quick player, a player that we have to watch out for sure.
And I mean, they get a little luck, I think, on the goal because Tyreek Mitchell he blocks a shot, but it like hits him in kind of like a spot you don't want to be hit. So he stays on the ground, and frankly, what the reason why that's an issue is Brendan Johnson's able to get the ball kind of like on a rebound, and just absolutely no one's around him, and he just kind of fires a shot. I think it's parried by Guaita, and then Gibbs White's able to kind of finish it because he's basically right there. Now, it looked like it was offsides, but they were able to they did the lines, and they said no, his kneecap is not an inch and a half or centimeter and a half, offside. So the goal counted, and I think one of the reasons maybe for Forrest is good for him, outside of that Arsenal game, is Gibb White has started to kind of come good for them, which is big because they spent a lot of money for him from
Yeah,
Wolves, and it's good to at least kind of see. see him kind of come around for them because he's gotten he got a goal versus Brentford, and 2 games, 2 goals.
Yeah, and he's beaten out some like good competition to get some starts. Because they bought so many players. They have a Woney, they have like Surridge. So there's he's beaten some good players into that lineup too. And I think this is a case where like that competition for spots is absolutely good and beneficial for Gibbs White for sure.
And one thing we're saying is, again, neither side were really great. Palace did get a PK earlier in the game, and you figure, maybe had they gotten that goal, and they were the dominant side, possessing the ball, maybe they would have forced Forrest to kind of change how they were playing, because they were kind of sitting back and allowing Palace to have the ball. So missing that PK was huge, and so Zaha was big for them last week, kind of leading the line for them, but he kind of came back and haunted them in this game.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just it's always kind of weird when Crystal Palace don't score against like these bottom clubs because you do think they have more than enough talent to score goals. And they've been scoring goals in a lot of games. So it's always weird to me to like not see Zaha on the score sheet against like a bottom four team. But fair play to Forest, and like we said, their defense has had issues. Made some changes. Steve Cooper made some changes, and they played well. And they got a much needed shutout.
Well, they've been playing last couple of weeks. They've been playing Zaha as like the striker because they didn't have Odsonne Edouard.
Hmm.
I don't know if Mateta was available or not, but I think Zaha works better as from a wider position. So I think he may be
Yeah,
kind of struggling a little from that. But this is a very good week for Nottingham Forest because they beat a pretty good, strong Spurs team 2-0 in the midweek. So they advanced in the cup game as well. So one of those, we keep talking about that theme of some teams wanting the break to happen and some teams not. Forest might be the team that's actually got a little momentum now, and now you're not gonna play for a little bit. Um,
yeah. Yeah, and if you look at their last five, it's all really good for them. I know they're still in that 18th spot, but they have 2 wins, 2 draws, and only 1 loss in the last five. So yeah, it's kind of not a good time for that World Cup to start for them because they're starting to pick up some momentum finally.
and
But
and been able
I mean,
to bounce back from that really bad Arsenal loss because it was like five
oh
five zero or 4-0.
yeah, yeah, true, good call. And they've bounced back from a couple losses. I mean, they've conceded 30 goals, so
Mhm.
yeah, that's a problem. But give Steve Cooper a month and a half to kind of maybe figure some things out. Maybe you go with this back four again, and there's a foundation to kind of dig yourself out of the bottom three.
I would like to see that too. We not just because we've kind of called it on this show, but I thought Will Bully, at least just to single someone out, was very very good. Just
Mhm.
he seemed quick to like anticipate and was good at like winning the ball back. So yeah, and so that's pretty much it. We won't be doing this again till I guess maybe after Christmas, Rex. So the World Cup starts this Sunday, and do you got any final thoughts on that?
No, I'm excited about it. We talked about how how nervous we are about United States because I could see them losing all three of these games. Man, it's going to be tough. But yeah, I'm excited about it. Hopefully, we can bring you like some quick 30-minute shows,
Hmm.
maybe with Alex and Jeremy, just to cover like the big games and to cover United States because there's going to be a lot of, you know, people are going to have selection issues with Berhalter, especially if we don't win games. And there's going to be a lot of things to pour over. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking. I mean, just the prospect of no soccer on Saturday really stinks. And at least we get one game on Sunday. But Monday for me is like that's the big day. That's the day when the World Cup really kicks off. Because we got England, Iran, we got Senegal, Netherlands, and we got United States, Wales. So there's literally soccer on from 8 a.m. till 4 when the United States game ends. So really looking forward to Monday. Don't really care too much about Sunday with Qatar and Ecuador. I'm still gonna watch. Obviously, there's no soccer.
Hmm.
That's on at 11 right before football, so I'm definitely gonna watch it. But Monday for me is that's the day when it's really gonna feel like the World Cup is here.
I mean, I'm curious how much legs these players going to have for this thing. So just it'll be interesting to see if that that shows up. Some teams like to play possession ball. Some teams like to rely off the counter. So does one style maybe suit another better? Because even with it being a Winter World Cup, I'm still think the humidity is going to factor in. So I don't know if that maybe helps someone like Spain, who not a lot of people are very high on at the minute. But another thing I'm kind of interested in is the regional component, because again, does maybe a Middle East team kind of benefit a little bit from this? What's kind of funny is Qatar's not in a good group for them because Senegal, African um, nations winners. Holland is maybe an outside
Favored.
choice to win the
Yeah.
whole thing. But what's kind of interesting is Senegal might not have Mane. And Koulibaly
Ooh.
looked pretty banged up, and I think Koulibaly's supposed to be their captain.
Ooh.
Versus in their last game versus Chelsea, he seemed to have a tight hamstring. So,
And
um,
even Ecuador like went through a really hard qualification process. I
mhm.
think they finished fourth, but Brazil, Argentina, teams like that are ahead of them. So like they're a seasoned team, and I was looking at their record, and they're tough to beat. They had a lot of draws, and I think they drew a game against Argentina. I think they drew a game maybe against Brazil. So
Well,
they're not going to be easy either.
the interesting about Ecuador is you need to look at how they do away from home, because they play
Mm.
their home games in is it Quito?
Quito,
They
yeah,
play their home
Quito
games in like 5,000 feet in the air.
elevation, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Now that is an interesting point. I didn't even think about that.
but I mean, the thing about Qatar, um, they actually played in the Gold Cup. They even played
Mm.
us. They played the
They
U.S.
played
pretty
well.
good.
They looked pretty good,
I
yeah.
think we only won 1-0. I think
Mm,
maybe even Turner made a PK save.
mm.
But I remember like they were good on the eye. Like I think six of their, I don't know how many numbers it is. A majority of their team was coached by Xavi before he went to Barcelona. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I forget what team it was, like Al Shad or something.
so
Something like that.
they've got players that people don't really expect. I remember this guy Afif being very quick and skillful. So it's possible they might surprise a little bit, even though I just don't. If they gotten a better draw, maybe you could kind of roll with them. Um,
Yeah.
but another thing to kind of say is I think it's a last hurrah for a lot of players that we've basically grown up watching. So Messi,
Yeah.
Ronaldo, maybe Manuel Neuer. I wrote Suarez,
Mm.
and maybe even Luka Modric. And it's just
Modric probably, yeah.
I remember kind of talking to Jeremy like during the whole like people were like kind of melting down, not really melting down, but people were like being like I'm old after the Federer and Serena Williams news, and this is kind of our moment too, because we've
Yeah.
watched soccer all our lives, and this is basically our last. This is kind of a change of the guard, a moment in some
Yeah.
respects for a lot
Lua
of
is
soccer
another
fans.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
Lua will probably be done.
great call.
Yeah, a ton of players, but I mean, it's sad. Yeah, it's sad, but I'm glad we get to see him one more time, and
Mhm,
I'll be rooting for Messi for sure. But at least he did kind of get the elephant off his back,
mhm.
in the Copa at least. So that might free Argentina up more. Looking at their roster, obviously they're incredibly talented. But yeah, like finally winning a cup, that might lift a little weight off their shoulders. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. And especially with like the Nations League, like some of these, like England did pretty well in qualifying, but the Nations League they're terrible. Germany the same. So like I don't know if is it the Nations League form that like is that what these teams are going to play like, or is it when they were dominating their qualifying groups? So that'll be interesting to see
And
too.
France was another.
France,
I think
yeah.
I think that's a really good call. Because it's not just the Nations League. There are a lot of these club or teams, countries that didn't necessarily have the best Euros. Germany and Holland also didn't have great Euros, but Germany and Holland got new coaches, where Portugal, France, Spain, England have stuck with the guys that they had in the Euros, and I'm curious if that ends up showing up or not. One of the reasons
Mm.
I'm not really high on France is because of Deschamps, even though
Hmm.
he's the World Cup holder. Um, and maybe basically one of the reasons why I'm not necessarily as high on Spain as maybe I wanted to be, is because of Enrique. But at the same time,
Mhm.
if it comes down to a game where Spain can get that one goal, all they need is one goal.
Yeah, true.
It's gonna be so hard to get the ball off them. It's possible
Yeah.
they could advance that way.
And
And
they have a lot of young, talented players too. I mean, you're talking about like Gavi, Pedri, Ansu Fati. So yeah, who knows with
they didn't
Spain
have
too.
Fati in Euros, and
Mhm.
if Enrique is able to actually play him, Fade
And no Gavi either.
Fade gives you a threat over the top that they just haven't had in a little bit. So you know,
Yeah, you don't have to just rely on Murata for
Thiago
goals.
wasn't able to make the lineup, so that lineup better be good. Is all I'll say. But another thing I want to
Yeah.
kind of end with is I'm curious if this is maybe a World Cup of South America revenge, because I remember in 2018 one of the big storylines was after the group of eight, it was all England Europe teams,
Hmm.
because
Right.
after Belgium knocked out Brazil, and after France knocked out Argentina, and so there's even talks about, is it just going to be European dominance? And quickly, Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay all have pretty strong teams going into this.
Yeah,
So I'm
definitely.
curious if we'll see that. I mean, Uruguay's got Betancourt, Valverde, and Nunes. So
Hmm.
it'll
And
be
Musler's a keeper. He's been in several World Cups, at least two. I remember him in like 2010.
mhm.
He was the keeper for Uruguay, and he's still there. So a little stability. Yeah, I mean, Brazil, their roster is stacked. Argentina's roster is stacked. So it could be revenge for South America. I'll tell you, the Copa was really fun too. I know we won't see like Luis Diaz with Colombia and things like that. But Brazil was really fun to watch. Argentina's really fun to watch. So those are games that I'm definitely going to be glued in on because you're going to see some just great talent, some great ball movement, some great goals. Yeah, and you could very easily see Brazil or Argentina lift the cup.
Well, another thing too is like there's like this thing online, and I actually do agree with it. And Messi's even talked about this recently. This is going to go a little long, but oh well. Is Yeah, there is an actual difference in the way that South America goes about the game than necessarily European teams, or just Europe in general. There's a lot more organization. You'll say there's a lot of there's this mindset to how do you play without the ball? How do you pressing essentially? And I remember when the Copa America and Euros happened at the same time, that was on display. Like you mentioned, Luis Diaz just making runs for fun. Neymar, Messi, kind of doing the same thing. You don't really see that necessarily in Europe as much. Eden Hazard maybe comes to mind, but that's kind of it.
Mhm.
It almost seems like a lot of this individuality is frowned upon or tried to be coached out because, again, you can blame maybe Klopp and Pep a little bit for this, but it seems in the youth academies or just in general, losing the ball is almost like a bigger sin than like threatening a coach's mother. And so players aren't allowed to express themselves either
Yeah.
young or even at the senior level. You see a lot of safe passes. You go long over the top, try to advance the ball that way. You don't see a lot of this creativity, and so I am kind of hoping that we at least kind of see a little of some of that. But
Hmm.
who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That'd be awesome.
And one final thing to kind of say, I know I've said that like 3 or 4 times. One of the main reasons I think people should be high on Argentina and Brazil. Everyone can talk about the stars and whatnot, but it's the two guys in the sticks. Argentina's got a legit keeper in Emi Martinez, and you saw him make get them through in Copa because I think he made like 3 or 4 saves in a PK
Hmm.
shootout. And Allison to
Yeah.
me is maybe the best. Courtois won the keeper of the year last year because he had a fantastic Champions League final. Allison was amazing last year, and Allison, his this is my Liverpool talking, but he's been amazing in pretty much any season he's played in. And so I
He's got
think
Ederson behind him too. It's crazy.
I think Brazil are in really good hands with Allison. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and
and if
so
Ederson comes in for a game or whatever too, and they don't lose much, so
yeah, and so that's pretty much it. Like Rex kind of teased it out a little bit. We'll try to do a show. We might not do a preview show because we kind of did a little preview in this. That's why we went a little long. We'll try to do a post game show, maybe with a couple of our friends again,
ooh,
and we'll kind of go from there. We might do a couple shows throughout the week, or maybe we'll just focus on USA. Um, if it only takes 15 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes, I don't think it would be that big of an issue for us to kind of do a couple more. But I don't know. Be on the lookout for that. And with that said, do you got any closing thoughts, Rex?
no, just ready for the World Cup. And everyone, USA fans, cross your fingers, man, because I think all three games are going to be close. I don't know, maybe 4 points gets you second in the group. So fingers crossed. Let's hope we can get something going and get out of the group at the very least.
Yeah, like you're saying, if you can get that win versus Wales, all of a sudden everything does kind of pop up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that one, it'd be great if like we don't have to win versus Iran or versus England. But
Hmm.
we'll kind of see. Um, yeah, World Cup's here. We finally made it. All controversy and all. I've seen a couple of journalists have already been kind of gotten their cameras taken away, and so hopefully we don't see a ton of that. But at the same time, FIFA's invited that because of what they've done.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Corrupt FIFA, taking the money to go to Qatar. So
and
they
we're
get
getting
what they get because of that.
and we're getting a Winter World Cup because of that. And so
Yeah.
I do genuinely worry about a lot of injuries
Me
that
too.
that we haven't seen. It's been brutal for these players just to get here, and
Mhm.
I think they're gonna drop like flies, and it'll be stars.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. It's going to be like hold your breath moment if you're watching, Liverpool players, or like if I'm watching England and I'm watching Saka, I'm going to be terrified the whole time that Saka's going to get hurt. So yeah, that's a concern with the Winter World Cup. We've never had it before, and you kind of they changed a lot of things around to have this in Qatar only. So it's kind of it's very annoying. And then not to even mention Qatar and their how they are socially. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm honestly surprised some teams didn't boycott, but
I mean, it's just one of those because I like Hugo Lloris. I think was asked about that, and he was like, "Come on, guys. I mean, we only get this once for every 4 years, and it's enough to think about the game." And so it's maybe a cop out, but I do kind of understand it. I know Norway when they were doing the qualifying had like a shirt about something like that, but
yeah. I
it,
think USA is going to do that rainbow badge for training. I don't think they can do it in the game, but they're going to do it in training, kind of as a big fu
I think
to Qatar.
I think it's also like it's not on the players to boycott. It's on the federations.
Yeah, yeah,
And along you could have done this when it was announced. A lot of the clubs could have been like, "Hell no, we're not going to do this," because again, it's hurting. It's going to be especially if a club loses a star player, that's going to hurt them financially.
oh
There's
yeah,
a lot of risk involved for everyone here. But,
hmm
anyways, that said, we will have our longest show of doing this.
yeah.
Hopefully that won't be too bad. I'll try to clip everything up and try to highlight everything. So if anyone wants to only hear a certain game, try to do that. But anyways, Rex, good to see you again. Thank you.
Yeah, good to be here, man. Good talk.
good to do this for 2 hours and 30 minutes. And with that said, yeah, World Cup's here. So
Yeah,
for all of us at the reserve squad, you stay squatty
everyone stay squatty. Watch, listen, do whatever. Drive, and listen to us in the car.
and stop recording.